to adjourn to executive session pursuant to MGLC 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel. Regular open session to resume at approximately 6:30 p.m. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, Ms. Rose?
Aye.
Mr. Schiff?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Ibello?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. We will adjourn to executive session, 6:16. Hello, and we'd like to reconvene at 6:30 p.m. The first item on our agenda is public comment. So we have a lot of folks that are here to speak tonight, and we're happy to have you all. I just want to let you know that speakers are limited to 3 minutes. We will time you, we will cue you when the 3 minutes is up. Whoever would like to come up first, you are welcome. Yeah, sure.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Suzanne Berry. I have 3 kids, 2 of whom are in the Monomoy schools and 1 who will be. I'm here tonight to urge for more mold testing to happen immediately. Courtney Wittenstein has been spearheading this for many of us. Her son has been sick for over a month, and tonight she is with him for the 4th time at Boston Children's Hospital, getting some more testing done. And she asked me to read a statement for her, so I'm just going to read it word for word from Courtney. Hi, everyone. As most of you know, I've been working tirelessly to look into this potential mold situation at the middle school. I've spoken to so many parents and faculty members who have had sick kids or are sick themselves or are just concerned. I spoke to Dr. Carpenter today, who is in agreement that more testing needs to be done. After getting unanimous support at the Harwich Select Board meeting Monday, I have 3 asks tonight. Number 1, Steve Swain and I spoke to a parent at Barnstable United Elementary School. Their school is facing the same challenges, but they're about 6 months ahead of us. They formed a mold task force. Tonight we are asking to make that happen. We would like to see 2 Harwich parents. Steve Swain and myself will happily volunteer. 2 Chatham parents, 2 faculty, 2 school committee members, and an expert from the community. How do we make this happen immediately? Does the board have to approve this? We feel like this would be the best way to make sure everything moving forward is fair and just, and that every group affected by this has representation. We would want to see all the builds for mold testing and vote as a group. Number 2, we are asking for disturbed air testing to be done throughout the whole building immediately. We need to treat this as an emergency situation and get a company in there as soon as physically possible. Number 3, and lastly, we are asking for better communication and transparency. Every parent and teacher has the right and deserves to know what is going on every step of the way. We as parents want updates on everything as it happens. Thank you for listening. I think we can all agree that we want our kids and teachers in a safe and healthy environment. And this is not an us versus them situation. We all need to work together for the betterment of our school. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney.
Hi, my name is Ann Sullivan. I'm here to discuss or read something about the possible changes in the integrated preschool. I've been a Harwich resident for over 21 years. I have 3 children, 2 who are twins. They both attended the integrated preschool as peer role models from 2014 to 2017. My oldest son, Patrick, who's now 21, started at HES at 3 years old, September 2006, but then was placed at the May Center Integrated Preschool at the Henry Wing School in Sandwich in January of 2007, where he attended until June 2012. At the time in 2006 and going into 2007, it was determined by his IEP team, the team that is of his parents, teachers, and the specialists that are formed on his IEP. In December 2006, it was determined that Harwich was not able to service his Grid C portion on his IEP. The May Center in Sandwich was identified as being the best place for him to go to get all of these services met on his IEP. He then returned back to Harwich for his 2nd year of kindergarten in 2012. I'm not sure if everybody knows what an IEP is, but just a little explanation. It's a federal document, and it's maintained by the Mass Bureau of Special Education as well as the Department of Secondary Ed. In the Grid C, in the IEP, which was determined that Harwich would not be able to support Patrick, and the reason why we brought him to Sandwich or was determined that he should go to another school. It is it's part of the IEP that is for pull-out services. It's also giving the opportunity for children to work one-on-one with a special education teacher, therapist, or aide, and it also gives them the option of being in a dedicated space. This is, let's see here, so this is when the student can receive individual speech, OT, PT, augmentative device trainings, as well as receiving ABA in the form of discrete trial trainings. Patrick had a diagnosis of autism. Well, we were happy that Patrick was going to be at school and all of his needs were going to be met. It was sad to see him leave Harwich. That was not in the plan for him. We wanted him to stay in the community. So he missed out on opportunities being here in Harwich. And I think the reason why I'm here is I would like to understand more of what's going to happen with possible changes at the integrated preschool, and also at levels in the Harwich Elementary for intense services, pull-out services in that Grid C portion of the IEP. It's concerning that there could be a possibility that other kids might have to leave the community, and I know that's not something that anybody wants to happen. So I'm asking, I'm just asking for you to consider, different opportunities and to really think about how that might affect the community and the children that are here and need those pull-out services, especially the intense needs that those kids have in that Service C delivery page.
We are at 3 minutes, I'm sorry.
All right, well, thank you for listening. I'm done.
Good timing.
Thank you.
That's all I have on my list.
Oh, okay. Whoever wants to step up next.
Hello.
Hi.
Ryan Edwards. All set?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I am speaking tonight with concerns regarding the preschool presentation that was posted in the agenda for tonight's meeting. We will hear that with declining enrollment, there's a single 4-year-old only morning session, and based on developmental needs of children, the afternoon session will combine 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. According to the projected enrollment numbers in tonight's agenda presentation, there are a total of 8 SWD 4-year-olds. This is a higher projected enrollment than the enrollments listed in the status quo, all to CES, and all to HES scenarios during the December 12th preschool presentation, all of which included an AM and PM program. So why now do we have to combine these age groups? While the developmental needs of SWD 3 and 4-year-olds might be able to be matched appropriately, I struggle with having some peer 4-year-olds in a class of combined ages while others are in a class of just 4-year-olds. As a parent, I feel there's a huge difference between the need of 3 and 4-year-olds when it comes to preparing them for kindergarten. Another point we will hear is that students served in the IEL program will be served in other sessions. There are a total of 3 SWD students that would normally be in the IEL program. In the previous presentation, this program was referred to as the pre-K intensive classroom. If these 3 students needed an intensive classroom before, is there another intensive classroom that they will be placed in that is age appropriate for them? To me, it seems like there would be a huge difference in having an intensive classroom that only serves 3 and 4-year-olds versus an intensive classroom that now includes ages from preschool to 4th grade. Also, if we eliminate the IEL program this year and then there is an influx of need next year, how difficult will it be to restart the program? We will also hear that this recommendation provides space for to-be-identified SWD children. The classroom assignment in tonight's agenda presentation only has space for 6 SWD 3-year-olds. There are roughly 9 months between now and the start of next school year, not to mention that SWD students can be added to the 3-year-old program throughout the school year as they transition from early intervention when they reach preschool age. What happens if there are more than 6 SWD 3-year-olds that are identified between now and June of 2026? Finally, we will hear that students who receive speech-only services attend as peers, and this recommendation also accommodates all current community friend peers. If a preschool student is having a hard enough time with pronunciation or speaking to the point where they require services from the school, then how is that not considered a SWD student? As a parent, I would like to know if this is a change from how these students were classified in the past. Also, if students who receive speech-only services attend as SWD students instead of considering them as peers, would this create enough peer spaces in the 4-year-old only AM and PM programs to accommodate all current community friend peers? As a parent and taxpayer, my personal preference is to have a 3-year-old AM and PM preschool class and a 4-year-old AM and PM preschool class at AGS, all while keeping the IL program intact. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I understand that there was a slide admitted from the presentation, and so what I wrote was based upon the presentation that was posted yesterday. I still think it's a good talking point, and it's a very important personal matter to me, so that's why I'm going to bring it up today. As a Harwich resident parent, I am confused as to why this new proposal is appropriate, given it was made clear that a preschool in each elementary school is not possible, and to have this new preschool program in Chatham would require cutting programs in integrated preschool at Harwich. The special needs preschool community and the ELL community are both important and need to be fully supported by the district, and to take from one program to build another makes it look like one is more important. It's divisive, and you're pitting communities against each other. The idea of a full-day program for a marginalized community is needed, and it's wonderful. I did find the presentation a little offensive and tone-deaf. I felt like it was created by someone who had not experienced life in a marginalized community. It's also felt very biased on what they thought the communities needed, and I can say this because I lived in that community. I grew up in that community. That was my childhood. I'm a first-generation Taiwanese Canadian American. Both my parents immigrated here from Taiwan. I spoke Mandarin and English at home and lived in a multi-family house with my cousins. You know, I found the slide regarding the language-rich program a little offensive, specifically where you're comparing both the integrated preschool program and the language-rich pre-K, and almost verbatim. And the only differences is the fact that one services students with special needs and one services ELL students. You know, primarily the statement where it's going to support ELL learners in the two towns to better ready them for kindergarten, and it will also have a friend-peer component, really came off as fairly negative to me. It really implies that speaking another language is a disability and that the children don't have any kindergarten readiness skills, such as sitting, cooperative play. The friend-peer component really added to that sentiment to me. I just want to clarify that students who speak another language can be peers in other areas, such as behavior, empathy, kindness. Speaking a language is not a disability, it's a gift. And I hope that negative implication was an error, but honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't. You know, a language-based classroom for ELL students requires an ELL teacher because they're specifically trained in understanding language development and linguistics. So when you were going to look at a program like that, I do hope you take into consideration that it will be run by an ELL teacher. Basing the criteria solely on language proficiency, you kind of run the risk of looking discriminatory. I mean, what would your criteria look like? What would you be using to make that criteria? You know, that study that was referenced in the slide before really highlighted the needs for a marginalized community. It wasn't solely focused on a dual language component. It really highlighted that the needs were more global. I mean, you can have someone from a marginalized community who's proficient in English, but also needs to be in a preschool program. You know, my background would be case in point on that. The study also highlighted the need for transportation and longer hours. If that's not a part of the proposal, you kind of miss the mark on really what some of the other aspects of what the community needed. The proposal seems, this new proposal for the preschool in Chatham, while absolutely worthwhile, it seems really sudden, and a lot of the logistics have been thought out. It seems like a really small Band-Aid for a much bigger issue.
We are at 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm almost done. And then there are other programs like CAPE that do provide a full-day preschool, transportation, working parent hours, and year-round options. That is what that community needs, what my community needs. And historically, with the way school budget is, we're looking at taking funds from one program that's necessary to fund another program, and that seems very wrong to me. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else coming up?
Hi, everybody. To the school committee, I want to thank you for so fully and wholeheartedly hearing our concerns as parents of our hometown preschool community. For many of us, these crucial early childhood years are our first taste of what the Monomoy School District has to offer, and feeling understood by the school committee is invaluable, particularly in light of the off-putting, dismissive, and discouraging responses from school administrators. In light of the preschool presentation given last month, where the Director of Student Services stated that there is no feasible way to sustain both the Chatham and Harwich preschool programs at this time, the slides for tonight are quite confusing in their stark contrast to that where there is now a totally new recommendation for a completely different preschool program to be run at Chatham without any accompanying numbers relevant to why it would be needed or how it is now feasible for both. We as parents are frustrated as a part of these new recommendations to be losing parts integral to the quality of our preschool program, restricting staff, making IEP students peers, which drastically limits the actual integration of the setting, losing an entire class, limited room for any growth in numbers, and eliminating access to the reputable IEL program. All of this now, while after moving to Chatham was not received by the community or committee, there is suddenly a 9-year-old plan that needs resurfacing to achieve a particular agenda. Why are we taking away elements of curricular excellence from the school that has the enrollment to sustain itself in order to continue setting up programs at the school that has such limited and declining enrollment that the attempts at separate preschool programs can't stay open? Areas of the revised preschool recommendation that should require some further consideration is whether these recommendations are following DESE law for public programs that integrate children with and without disabilities, and categorizing communication impairments requiring an IEP as a disability when determining numbers of students with disabilities within a classroom setting. We want to ensure that this was comprehensively taken into account when making the recommendation to consider speech-only students as peers. And to Christy's beautiful point, we're also wondering how are students that can't speak English considered such a high need that they now require a specialized program that takes away from the quality and standards of the already established program at Harwich, but yet somehow by that same coin, students in preschool on IEPs for speech and language that cannot appropriately speak are now considered to be able to navigate on their own as peers. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? No? Okay. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your feedback. Moving on to the approval of minutes. We have the November 21st, 2024 meeting and the December 12th, 2024 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Do we have any discussion or questions on the minutes? Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'm going to do these separately because I think we've had different folks absent from different, so I don't think we can do them together. So I'm going to make a motion. Let me take for us to approve the November 21st minutes as presented in the packet.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Sorry, who was my second? Was it Jackie? It was, I think Ryan. Abstain.
Did you abstain? Were you looking?
I
Oh,
asked
okay.
who the second was, I'm sorry.
Oh, Jackie, I think you're right. All right, and I'll make a motion for the December 12th minutes as presented in the packet for approval.
Second.
Excellent, that was Brad. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, Jackie abstained. Okay. Moving on to reports and discussions. We have relations with non-public schools, Cape Cod Christian Academy. And this, does anyone have any outstanding questions on the Cape Cod Academy? We are to vote on approving her as a private school.
Excuse me, I have one question.
Oh, of course.
As far as access to the school, are the children secured while they're there? Is there access to the school through the church where strangers or any harm could come?
Dr. Vadas, do you want to come up to that? Thank you. So the question is there access through the
Full
church?
access for the children wouldn't be secure during the school day.
So the children are in the presence of a teacher. They're with their teachers all through the day. So whether they are being escorted down to the lunchroom or whether they're coming back from that, they are with their teachers. The times that other people are using other spaces, we are in our education wing at that point.
Okay.
So-
But the public does have access to the building while the children are there.
The public, yes, so the church upstairs, there is another entrance upstairs where there is an access for the public.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Doctor, again, can you just talk about, I think it was Mondays and Fridays, you're talking about the satellite campus, and the percentage of satellite being considered at home. What is that percentage versus other locations?
I think I presented that in my
Right.
last presentation, so I don't have that slide available right now. But what I can tell you is there are 5 days of academic programs, a full school day on all 5 days. Some of those days are on the main campus, and they are taught by our classroom teachers. The other 2 days are at the home, wherever the satellite campus is, and those are being implemented by usually the parent that we look at as our paraprofessional, that is implementing the lessons that the professional teacher planned.
Are the teachers involved at all directly on those days, or is it from what the teacher's lesson has been, and then the parent or the caregiver is following those instructions?
So the teacher is involved in the fact that they planned the entire day. So they wrote the entire lesson for the day, and the curriculum and all of that is all planned by the teacher.
But the teacher's not involved in that day, there's no remote.
So we're not a remote school at all. Everything is in-person instruction, whether it's by the classroom teacher or whether it's by the parent or tutor or whoever's doing that instruction. The person on the Monday and Friday satellite days are our paraprofessional, our co-teacher to our main teacher. Our main teacher does all of the core teaching, and it's all reinforced on those Mondays and Fridays, but it's still a full day. And an example would be math. So math is not you can have 3 days and skip 2 days, or just practice 2 days. You still have to continue on. So if the standard is that they're going to be learning division, that's taught in the classroom. Maybe they go to the next step, but by the third day, if they learned 2-digit division in class, maybe they are doing a third digit or something at home. But the actual core instruction is done by the classroom teacher and implemented at home as well by the parent or caregiver.
And when you're saying a full day, it's the same as when they're in person at the main campus?
It is. They have the same day. They have all the same subjects. They have all of the same rigor, all of that stuff. It's just not being done by the classroom teacher. It's being done by usually the parent or whoever's doing the instruction on those other 2 days, which again is comparable to a paraprofessional in a public school.
Thank you.
Jackie?
Thank you for coming back.
Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't come last time. I think that was on me. No.
Don't worry about it. I don't think I was here last time you were here either. I just had a follow-up question from Brad's, and that is, when the students are remotely taking their classes from home, is there a structured time they have to check in and check out, or is it just kind of more like you have what you need to get done within a certain time frame, and so that you're keeping up with it, the parents keeping up with the standards for the child, so it's kind of a work at your pace type of model. And I know before we talked about, this model also gives opportunity for families to travel outside of school vacation time and things like that, but able to do that work while on the road. So there's no stringent or strict structure around, your Monday through, other than the days that they're physically in the school.
Okay, so yes and no. So on the 3 days they're in school, it's very much like, structure. On the home days, or the days, the satellite campus days, I should say, those days they're still doing that full time of math. Whether they do 30 minutes, take a break, and come back and do 30 more minutes, it's going to be less structured in that way, but they still have to complete the entire lesson. And that teacher on Tuesday checks back in, they have completed all of the lessons that were done on the satellite days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there training for whoever's teaching on the satellite days?
Yes, so the paraprofessional, co-teacher, teaching parent, however you want to call them, they come in the summer, and we give 2 full days from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So 2 full days of curriculum, how to implement the lesson, how to set up the classroom, how to make it mirror what's happening at school. So that's done. We also have 2 other days during the school year that we call refresh conferences, where the parents come in and we, again, checking in, how's it going, what things are going well, where are you still having trouble, and we give some coaching around that. We give training in things like the math, why is it different, how can you be successful there, here's the videos that we have to make sure that it is equally rigorous at home, and if you have a question, you get that support. And then the teachers are just an email or a phone call away on those days as well if they run into a hurdle that they're needing some extra support in. So there is support for the parents all through the year, but especially the training days in the summer and then other days in the fall and the spring.
Thank you.
Doctor, from the presentation that you gave, as I recall, the academic scores were pretty strong.
Yes.
What do you, and again, I know that you covered this, but, it was
I know, it's been
full of
good.
holidays. What do you attribute that to?
I think that we have a really strong program. I think that a lot of that is because the parents are super involved in their children's education, so they are getting a lot of that one-to-one support at home from their parents, caregivers. They're also getting it in a small group setting at school. I think we have great literature that's, a diverse set of literature. A lot of it's classics and stuff, so I think a lot of that contributes, but especially the small group instruction and the parents just being super involved because this model requires it. I've been a teacher in a public school. I know how much it affects the student when we have a lot more support, and kind of working collaboratively together for that same goal. So I think that that's what really helps our reading scores. We have great reading scores, very strong. It shows that the academic program that we are implementing is working for our students.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all for your questions.
Are we ready to make a motion?
I'll make the motion. I would like to move that we accept the proposal from Cape Cod Christian Academy to operate as a private school in Harwich.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? One abstain. Okay, looks like it passes. Thank you very much. Next up is the fiscal year 26 revised preschool recommendation.
Good evening, Liz McGuire, Director of Student Services. So what I wanted to start with is there were some great questions that were brought up, that were presented to me last evening. So I wanted to make sure that those questions were answered because they really are great questions. So I want to start first with early intervention and understanding, how that works, what the process is, how we connect with early intervention quite frequently. So first what happens is regulations say that we're supposed to receive a list of students, potential students, who are receiving early intervention services 6 months in advance. So we usually get a list in the summer, in January, and then we might get another list depending on where early intervention is. So, and that's for planning purposes. And on that list, there's students who are 2 years in terms of their span before they turn 3, so that we know almost 2 years in advance when a student who's receiving services in early intervention, which is 0, birth to 3, may come to us for evaluation. Not all students who are receiving early intervention will qualify for special education services, and that's why we have a process. So that list is also updated when a student moves into one of our towns and they are receiving early intervention. So we may receive a referral from them if there's a student who's moved in. It doesn't remain constant, so that list, the early childhood coordinator, who's fantastic, who has been in the field of early childhood for many, many years, has a strong relationship with early intervention. So when we get that list, they also update us if a student is no longer receiving services. In other words, they don't have a disability that necessitates an evaluation. That list it moves continually. So they may not require services from early intervention anymore, so therefore they're not on our referral list. Or they may come to us following early intervention, they're turning 3. We evaluate prior to 3, so that if they do qualify, we can place them at 3. That's the regulation. So they may come to us, and our evaluation is based on educational disability. So some students may not meet the eligibility criteria for an educational disability. Some students may qualify for related services, and there was another question, and it's not on the slide, but the placement of students who receive, say, speech services, that's not a new practice. That has always been the practice. The criteria for being in the program, right, as a special education program, requires other levels of disability that necessitate specialized instruction across all of those skill sets that are needed in a preschool setting. So speech services for a student is not new as far as peer placement is concerned. And then right now, currently, all children coming from EI for the remainder of the year are accounted for. So the numbers that you will see are the numbers that we have for the rest of the year. We do not have any other referrals from early intervention. Now, having said that, and going up to the last couple of bullets, may somebody move in? Most certainly. Those are moving numbers for any of our students that come into the district. But right now, all students are accounted for. There are no students receiving early intervention from now to the end of the year that we have not accounted for. So our next referral list should come out in July, again, unless a student enters early intervention from now to the end of the year, but that would have to be a move-in because they have the current students. Remember, it's 0 to 3, so they already have their students that they're servicing. And this continually fluctuates. We talk every month, myself and Aaron meet every week actually, but every month we look at the early intervention referrals. We have conversations with early intervention. We stay on top of that to make sure that we understand what we should anticipate. So other ways that students are referred to preschool, your parent referral. So a parent may have a concern about their child, and they request an evaluation. And this could be between the ages of 3 and 4. And typically, these students may be attending a daycare or a private preschool program. So we then evaluate that student to determine eligibility and propose services if they're eligible. Obviously, this is a rolling referral process. At any point during the year, a parent, regardless of the age actually, but we're just talking about preschool, may come to us and say, I have a concern. And so we evaluate. The next part is our screening process. In the spring, we offer a couple of days to screen children who will be turning 3 in the fall. And at that screening, the evaluators look at the child and look to see if they may have a suspected disability that would require an evaluation. And this is also an opportunity to look at peer placement opportunities. And then the last way for preschool is we have students in our programs that are peers, and the teacher, having worked with that child, may indicate that they are concerned about their development, and they, may request an evaluation at that point. So at this point, all of the students, and when I go through the numbers, again, you wouldn't have had these slides because we added these to make sure we could answer questions that came up. I'm going to show you several numbers, especially historical numbers too, because that was another question that came up. So Now when we look at the integrated preschool, so the purpose of the integrated preschool is to design special education services for students with disabilities. That is the purpose of the preschool, right, is to support our youngsters aged 3 to 5 with disabilities. When we look at the regulations, we have a maximum of 7 students with disabilities in a session that require a program, different from itinerant service like speech, because I know that's the point that came up. So those services are designed to meet the unique learning needs. And so when we look at a student with disability, we have a range of service, right? And these are kind of I'm going to call the regulatory terms, low, moderate, and high needs. And that's determined through the evaluation process, and it's determined when that evaluation is reviewed and considered to determine the level of need the student has and the services. So within the integrated preschool, some students receive all of the services in the integrated preschool classroom by the special education teacher and/or related service provider, speech, OT, PT, etc. That's low need, okay? Now, not diminishing any need, but that's just a category to explain how we develop the services. Then you have some students who receive their services partially in the classroom, so they may be out of the integrated preschool classroom for some of the services, again, by the special ed teacher or related service provider. That's moderate need. And then you have some students that receive 50% or more of the services outside of the classroom. That's high needs. For example, the IEL program. So this I just wanted to illustrate how do we look at the types of services students are eligible for and how we design their services. Now, in terms of the community friends, our ratio is we have a maximum of 7 students with disabilities and 8 students who are community friends or peers, right? So that's at 49% to 51%. So our community friends who are in the integrated preschool, they may also receive speech, OT, PT as an itinerant service, that it doesn't rise to, when we look at that low, moderate, or high need, that they don't require a program, okay, a special education program to have their services delivered. Then we have our IEL programs, and it's plural because we have 2 at Harwich Elementary. We have certainly our original IEL program, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the IEL programs were designed to provide services for students with intensive special needs, which is our high-need students, pre-K through grades 4, right, prior to 2022. That program is designed to provide opportunities for inclusion for all of the students regardless of their disability. But they may not be able to spend, a significant amount of time in the inclusive classroom. They might be there 5 minutes, they might be there 15. Our goal is to increase the amount of time that they are able to develop skills and apply those skills in that inclusion classroom. Post-COVID, there was a significant increase in preschool students who did not receive early intervention services and were then being referred by parents, right? So our main base is early intervention because they know who those students are. So there was a significant increase, and we saw that. We saw the needs rise drastically. As a matter of fact, it was the highest referral for intensive special needs students all the way back to 2014, and I'll show you those numbers. So we knew that was going to be impactful for our youngsters. So we decided at that time, because of the numbers, so that 2022 was the post-COVID, we decided that we really needed to add an additional program to support those students. So as you can see in 2022, when we came back, we had 12 students that needed that intensive program. And that continued in 23-24 to 11 students. 24-25, we have 3 students. So a lot of those students were able to move on. A lot of those students did not require or necessitate that level of restrictiveness in their programming. And for next year, we still have 3 students that require that level of service. They will continue. The services will never change in terms of their individual education program, their special education services. That will not change. They will still be serviced. They will still have an IEL program, but it'll be our program that has been there always and was already providing services to our pre-K students before we opened up the separate pre-K aisle. So that will not change. They will still have aisle as a program and a place for them to receive their their services. The level of staffing will not change, so the staff that were in the pre-K aisle will move, will stay with those children. That will be the same staffing pattern. There'll be the special education teacher of aisle and additional staff in that program. It's a very small program. So they will still receive the same level of service. And I just wanted to give just a little bit of illustration from 2014 so that you can really see how we had a huge uptick from 2015, straight through. And then you can see COVID, obviously we didn't have community friends because we were remote. And then coming back in, we saw that uptick in students with disabilities over those 2 years, significant. And now we're starting to see some stabilization because students are now back full force receiving early intervention services. So we're not seeing the level of intensity of referrals because they're getting that early intervention. So in terms of the 25-26, right, we know who we know right now, most definitely. We know who from early intervention, and right now we don't have any referrals up until the summer, which would be students who would start in the fall. We do have some students who are being evaluated, and those numbers you can't necessarily include because you can't predetermine whether they'll be eligible or not. However, I did illustrate here there is a potential for 2, and I can't say one way or another because that's up to the evaluation process. However, truth in lending, put it there. Could another student be in evaluation tomorrow? Sure. Could neither of these students be eligible? Those just aren't things that we can, for sure say. But I did want to show, but with that, that there is a potential for those 2 students. So with that, and I did, put that here too, with that, for the 3-year-olds, we have a total of 5 students. For the 4-year-olds, we have a total of 8 students. And again, having talked about the ratio before, we need to maintain 49% to 51% ratio, which is the number of peers equals students with disabilities plus 1, okay, per session. So these are our numbers right now. They're the most stable numbers we have through the rest of the year and moving into next year. Come July, and having deep conversations with early intervention and really pushing, we can't get a number. They don't have anyone for us in terms of, that 2-year range that we typically get. So we usually get a list of a student who is 2, right? So that we know 2 years out that we can, within those 2 years, that we can say, okay, we know we've got a couple coming in 2 years or 1 year. We don't have that right now. And that's a constant conversation with EI that we try to really pin down, but there's just no numbers right now to speak of. So with listening and with trying to make the program as valuable as it has always been and service all of the students, and that was really important, meaning all of the peers and all of our students who require a specialized preschool program. This is the recommendation that we came up with. So there is 2 3-year-old sessions, an AM session and an integrated session. And when we looked at that integrated session, we definitely looked at the developmental aspect, as we always do, because we always have kids that have fluctuated in our programs, especially when we've received more referrals than could be managed in one session. And when I say that, like for example, that 3 to 4-year-old, that 1-year span, there are some students who are much younger or older from the 4, or maybe turning 5. So when we look at developmentally what's appropriate between 3 and 4-year-olds, we take a very close look at that and what their needs are. And so that's how we designed the AM and the PM session, really looking at the students, what their needs are, and creating that integrated, well, it's an integrated preschool, but, that session with 3- and 4-year-olds, that their needs could be met. The students with the asterisk next to it, those are our ISLE students. Now, mind you, they would be receiving supports from ISLE, but we also have those children included in activities in the preschool. Typically, what happens, in regulatory-wise, because they have a program that they're going to be assigned to, the ISLE program, you don't have to count them in the numbers, okay? But I didn't want to lose sight of them. So in other words, up top where it says 3-year-old 1, down below 3-year-old 3, and then 4-year-old 1, right? If you look at those, I don't have to count those in that number. That could actually be another slot. The problem is trying to articulate all of these moving pieces in a way that's understood. So typically, we do not count them in our student with disability slots, okay? So really, there's an additional 3 other slots. Now, however, it's fine to leave them there too, because we want them to participate, but just for the community to understand, they typically aren't part of the census. In other words, they're not part of the legal requirement for 7 and 8, 7 children in a session. So they're not an 8th child. And I don't know if I'm making sense with that, because it's a little confusing. But I didn't want to lose sight of the fact that we have these 3 children who were in our ISLE program who will continue to receive their services. Let's see. So I talked a little bit about the speech-only services. That's been always the practice. That's a practice everywhere. That's not anything new or different. It's just being presented, because that's not something we just talk about, right? We don't talk about student placements and services usually, but this is, the first time that we have, really looked at or dived deep into what our services look like. So you might have heard that for the first time, but that's not something people necessarily know, but that is the practice. And then I think moving forward, I think Dr. Millen is going to come and speak to the next part, but I will stop for questions on my section.
Ms. Anderson?
I know you kind of just touched on it, but just looking at the slots and the potential slots.
Yep.
Would it not make sense to put all those 3-year-olds in one session and then have a smaller, just 4-year-old session in the afternoon?
Well, we still need to make sure we do keep open slots. Are you saying just one AM session for 3-year-olds and one PM session for 4-year-olds? I would not recommend that, because we need to make sure we do have slots and availability moving forward. So, so that where it says 5 new SWD up top.
Yep.
Do we have those No, we don't. Could it happen? And that, of course, was one of the questions and comments that were made. And that's why we always keep those open, because sure enough, somebody will move in, and somebody will not have been receiving early intervention services, and then a parent comes and says, I'm worried about my child. So if we do that, we won't have any slots. And then we'd have to look at, when kids come in, opening another session, but you can't open a session with one child either. So we want to make sure there's flexibility in the available slots. Am I answering your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you, and you would say that would make sense,
Right, and
but
I just see the new slots shifting, like morning, afternoon, but I just wanted to ask.
yeah, no, definitely. It is an incredibly complex, it's very complex, because it's not constant,
Right.
and we always need to leave room, because we can always say, like, for example, and I'll give you an example. You may have a 4-year-old that comes in, but developmentally, you know what, they're going to do really, really well with the 3-year-olds, right? And I would argue that the 3- and 4-year-olds across the board do very well together, right? Like, oftentimes you don't know who's 3 and who's 4 in a program, because you're teaching those preschool, standards, right? Those readiness skills. You're teaching them to everybody, right? But for students with disabilities, they're receiving, explicit instruction to meet their unique need, And that might not be with the group, that might be outside of the classroom because they need that explicit instruction. So while, yes, it's easy to say, you could say, we could just do an AM and PM session with 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, it leaves no room for flexibility for students to come.
Thank you.
Jackie? Thank you, Melissa. Just to follow up on Mary's, if that model, if what she was suggesting, how many what would the total class size be?
Well, for the 3-year-olds, you have 5 3-year-olds, right? And you have 8 4-year-olds. So you couldn't put 8 4-year-olds in a session anyways, right? Now, you might be able to put one of those 4-year-olds in the 3-year-old sessions, and then that would cap the 3-year-old session and cap the 4-year-old session. And that would leave no room for referrals.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Are any positions being eliminated with this new recommendation?
So, yes, so the aisle, well, when you say eliminated, it's not a position, but it's an FTE. So the aisle program has 1 FTE. So that 1 FTE will go away. But it's not, so when I say FTE, I'm not saying person, right? So it's the FTE, yes. And a .5, because we don't need a 1.0, sorry, we don't need a 1.0 for the 4-year-old.
Melissa, you talked about how having one student, it's not going to be effective to have it. In the morning session here, right now, would be 2 3-year-olds. How effective is that going to be? Because again, we don't know what's going to be happening, whether there's going to be children identified as needed or whether somebody's going to be moving in. So planning forward, if nobody else came in, given the information we know today, how effective is that going to be?
So, and again, it's the most difficult thing to predict. What we do know historically, right, when we look at, say, these numbers here, so you see the 34 in this past year, that 34 didn't start out as 34 students, right? Because it's a rolling entrance, and it's so unpredictable, we just don't know. So as much as, I would love to say, hey, can we just do a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and can we just keep adding sessions as kids come in? That's not beneficial either, right? Because you can't just all of a sudden, now you need to add a session because you can't have that 8th kid, right? That 8th little munchkin in that session. Now you only have 1 student, you might not even have a peer. That's less beneficial than at least keeping some, and can we look at, let me just back up a second. So the way this is now, the 2 3-year-olds up top and the 3 3-year-olds down below, honestly, that might not stay constant. There might be, someone might say, you know what, this student actually would be served well in the AM session. You know what I mean? I have to illustrate something. What I can illustrate is how time-consuming it is to constantly ensure that we're placing students properly, right? So that might not even stay constant, but what I need to show is the numbers, right? How many we know we have and how many slots might be available. So that may change. But right now, that grouping, based on everyone looking at who those students are, is what makes sense right now. I guarantee you in a couple of months, someone's going to move out, someone's going to move in, right? Not necessarily to cover all of those slots that are open, but that will happen so that we need to constantly be able to shift and make sure that we're servicing the needs of the students. Does that make sense?
Yes, you're saying there will be change.
Probably. I mean, based on the students and, it's forever changing. I can tell you from the time I presented last time to now in terms of, a student being referred for an evaluation. So that's what I can't constantly, give you is, are there going to be students that may need to be evaluated? We have our screening that's coming up. Usually there's 1 or 2 students. So that's why it's really important that we have those slots that remain open, is so that when we evaluate a student, we have a slot available.
I just want to ask a clarifying question. Students who receive speech-only services attend as peers. Has it always been that way? Okay.
Yes, that's what I had said earlier. I just don't, that's I don't, that's not like a thing to talk about, right? Like, that's always been the practice, because the program itself requires for the service delivery of a special education program. So it's all encompassing services that you don't have readiness skills, you need it's kind of that moderate and high need service delivery. So for a student who has a significant speech disability, right, significant, I would probably venture to guess that they also have other developmental disabilities, so they're probably being placed in the program. When we place a student for speech only as a peer, it's typically articulation, right? It's typically something that they have the skills, they have the readiness skills that they're working on that we don't need to provide any other special education services or supports for. And typically, that service happens right in the classroom, right? So usually the speech-language pathologist is coming in the classroom and working with that child on the skill. So I don't want people to feel like, well, only, we throw every speech kid into, peer. No. We base it on this level of service need. So kids with speech service only typically that have speech only don't have other services and are very capable of being a peer and model and part of the preschool program.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Just so my brain is in the same place. With this new recommendation, because the last recommendation was everyone was moving to Chatham. So this new recommendation is that all preschool is at Harwich. So the preschool that we put in Chatham last year is not going to be there.
No, they will be here. They're accounted for in these numbers. The one.
So there will no longer be preschool in Chatham again.
Not integrated preschool.
Not integrated.
Not integrated preschool, which is the special education program. So the one Chatham child and the 4 peers, and again, that may change too because, parents may choose not to be a peer too, are accounted for in these numbers. Okay, so Chatham child and the 4 peers are accounted for in these numbers here.
So is there another preschool at Chatham that will be at Chatham?
Robin's up next.
Okay.
Yep, so for me, just talking about the special education program, and then Robin's going to come up and talk about the brainstorming about this.
Okay,
Any
sounds
other
good.
questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Good evening, everyone. Robin Millen, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. I think it was a good segue, the question that you just asked. I think when we were listening to the concerns over the last couple of weeks about programming for the special education students and things like that, the driving question that we just kept coming back to is, are we meeting the needs of all of our families in our district, including our preschool families beyond the special education platform and our community peers? So I just want to give you a little history on why we're kind of driving this question now, because it does seem that the community really wants to engage in a conversation of high-quality preschool instruction throughout our communities, and what do we do for all of our students. So back in June of 2016, which I know seems like forever, especially with the pandemic. Oh, first, I want to apologize. I've been sick, so if I have to tap out, Superintendent Carpenter's taking over. I'm going to try to make it through it. In June 2016, a large group of people came together from various members of the community. So Monomoy Regional School District, Harwich and Chatham came together. DUI came together, so Dennis and Yarmouth as a town came together. Cape Cod Collaborative came together. We grouped with our community partners, including our community preschool programming. We came together with our health agencies, with our state partners, including the early education of early ed. And we came together to investigate if there were needs for all of our students to receive high-quality instruction in preschool. And it was due to a preschool expansion grant that was available at the time. So this was a large committee. I think when I look at the list, it was about 45 people on this committee that really spent a lot of time looking at this. So during that expansion grant work that they did, the first thing that they did was conducted a needs assessment in the community. When they were working on that needs assessment, they also created a shared vision. What did Monomoy want to have in their community as a high-quality instructional preschool programming? what did DY want to do? Because it was an expansion grant, so it was looking at across districts. It wasn't just looking at the communities that we had, and that was in recognition that it was all built off a Cape Cod construct. We knew our populations were dwindling, they're lowering, and we wanted to make sure that even with lower populations, that we're still meeting the needs of all of our students. So they created a shared vision, and within that shared vision, there was a big focus on the leadership that needed to happen when we're focused on preschool education. They also looked at teacher capacity during that time. They looked at the classroom quality at that time. They looked at comprehensive services, so like wraparound services with our health professionals. What do our families need? Not only our students, but what do our families need? What is the family engagement that is needed? What is the inclusion that we wanted to see? What were the curriculum instruction, the high-quality curriculum instruction programming that we wanted to see? And this wasn't just for public school education. It was with our community private schools as well. And then what was our birth to 3 alignment? So with the EI and some of the other programming that we have out there. So within that shared vision, that needs assessment that they built, they decided to create a strategic plan model in 2016 to provide access to high-quality preschool programming that included the public schools, like I said, our community partners, including our community preschools, and then that wraparound programming. The needs assessment delineated, and I think Ms. Lynn referenced it for us, it was broader than just language. It referenced severe issues with poverty, transportation, dual language, family dysfunction, and access for our students to receive high-quality preschool in our communities. That comprehensive need assessment then developed a 3-year strategic plan that was developed, but it was never fully implemented. So in 2017 was going to be the first implementation year of that grant. Well, 2017 happened. Things started to move a little bit. We started working on it when I was principal at Chatham Elementary School. We started working with Head Start. We worked with our community partners like the Y. We started the programming at Chatham Elementary School. We did all those things. We moved into 2018-19, COVID. So I'm not saying COVID was the only thing that happened, but I think the PEG grant then dissipated. We moved on. We went through the pandemic, and now we are here. So we may have a strategic opportunity to have this discussion again as a community when we're having this, the inclusion and integrated programming discussion as well. So the other thing that this does, and in this community discussion, is it connects really well with our current strategic plan. So within our strategic plan, we have a curricular excellence sub-goal, I guess it would be. Inside that goal, there's 3 initiatives. So one is to promote the early literacy development through partnerships with families and caregivers, early childhood providers, and community organizations. The second one is to continue to identify and address those systematic inequalities mentioned in the grant, the needs assessment for the grant, that contribute to the achievement disparities that we see in our schools, and allocate resources to ensure that all students have access to high-quality learning experiences. And that includes our preschool students. We need to make sure we're focusing on them. Oftentimes we say as a district, it's a K-12 district. It's not. It's a pre-K-12 plus district. We have to recognize all of our learners. So I think there is today like a possible opportunity for us to discuss, and you as a school committee to consider. We would like to start small if we can do this investigation. Start small within our district. We're not ready for a big expansion grant again. The money's not out there, but I think we can use what was already developed as a starting point. I'd like to reconnect with our community partners, including our community preschools, and others, which I have already done, because the strategic plan has been in place. I've already met with, well, actually last year I met with the Monomoy Early Childhood Council. I started working with our own preschool programming here in school, like starting to pull together, like where are we here? What do the families need? Is it the same thing that we saw in 2016-17? Is it different? Is it better? Is it worse? Is it post-pandemic? What's going on here? So we've already started having these conversations because of that strategic goal. But it's really important that we reconnect. We don't assume that the needs assessment that was done in 16 is actually what we might want to think about as programming if this goes into place. So are there unmet needs still there? And we need to confirm those sources. If there are unmet needs, whether they're the same or different, it would be really important for us to begin the work with interested parties, because I hear that there's very much interest in this across the towns and across our community, to work with our community partners. It's really important that we work with our community partners. This has to be with them. It can't be in competition with them. It can't be this versus that. It can't be this program versus that program. These are separate programs that will help all of our children. So we want to adapt that PEG strategic plan if needed, and then to define a pilot program to work to redefine the strategic steps based on those current needs. The third thing that would be an opportunity is to create a timeline to pilot this program, whether it be housed in Chatham, Harwich, or with one of our community partners, to be decided. But right now, we have open space. We have the location in Chatham now that the recommendation has been made, and if that's what you all decide. And in the PEG grant originally, the first step was to assess facilities. And at that time, we didn't have space in our public schools. We were still much larger than we are now. I, in Chatham, only had one classroom for Head Start to come in. We put them in, but now we have space. So wherever we have the space, let's think about where that program can be housed. Set clear success criteria and milestone expectations to measure and assess a pilot program should we decide to do one, and then promote the programming and understanding of the goals of this pilot program. There were some specific goals outlined in the PEG grant, and basically that was to make sure we're meeting the needs of all of our students, the word being all. And then in the future, if we go forward, year 2 and beyond, it would be important that we continue to measure those milestones for pilot success. And then if we implement fully, we need to make sure that there's additional needs and collect student success data along the way. We don't want to put a program in if it's not working. We don't want to continue it. We need to rethink of it. We always have to iterate and make sure student success is the core of our vision. We want to make sure we update the committee because it is a budgetary consideration. In the PEG grant, there was a community, Cape Cod Collaborative, who was going to be kind of holding this together for us. But if we start this as an individual district, then we need to make sure that the school committee understands the budgetary responsibilities that will be there, especially as we're planning forward in the FY 26 and 27 budgets. And then we want to make sure we engage with the additional districts. That grant proposal, people were so excited about. I mean, it was like a novel strategic plan to come out of this area because we don't have those kind of cross-district kind of expansion opportunities. And I think there is a definite need and a possibility to do some really exciting stuff with this and make sure that if we do that, we want to make sure we engage an outside entity to help kind of leadership and control some of the budgetary things and about the possibility of that expansion. Okay? So maybe a strategic opportunity. Fred?
Robin, how would you go about measuring this? Because again, this would be the first time, and what would be the benchmark to determine success?
Well, so it's interesting because I don't know yet. That's why that secondary needs assessment. And I don't think we need to do a full-blown needs assessment. I mean, I had long conversations, I know, with Dr. Kelly and Dr. Catone about what are the determined needs that they're seeing right now, also with the team chairs and the preschool families and things like that. Like, we kind of have an idea, but we need to know what is the unmet needs. But we also have some very disparate data on our students. Students who go to pre-K have an increased success probability in kindergarten, first grade, and beyond. There's some very strong research out there about different programming, especially for our multilingual students and students that need those wraparound services. That's why Head Start's in there and things like that, where the academic would definitely be a success criteria. Like, how do they enter kindergarten? How do they get into, what do they look like? Are they reading by grade 3? Those kind of data would definitely be part of that. But I also think we have some other, I wouldn't say it's soft data that we would want to measure, but it's also family success. Like, if I go back to that original grant, the needs assessment delineated poverty, transportation, dual language, family dysfunction, and access. I mean, in that grant, they talked about, looking at alternate scheduling. Like, is this not a 9 to 3 program or an 8 to 3 program? Is this a 12 to something program? I don't know. And is that increasing the ability for families to have success too? So I think that would be some of the success criteria I would recommend, but I won't know that for sure until we do the assessment.
Understood. By doing this, by having the program at Harwich and in Chatham, there's going to be a cost associated with it. And I'm going to assume Michael is going to be able to talk about that during budget.
You're getting us all tonight.
Budget presentation? Okay.
Yes, I think so. I think with the current recommendation with the integrated preschool, then the recommendation, if this was to come to fruition, and again, we have a lot of work to do in order to think about that, then the cost, we're thinking that the programming should probably be in Chatham, so that we kind of have that cost share.
Jackie? Thank you, Dr. Millen. The second to last page of the presentation, don't know if it came up on the screen or not, but the integrated pre-K Harwich and then the language-rich pre-K initiative at Chatham.
So I apologize, I was sick this week. So
That's okay.
That was just a placeholder that was put in, and it was removed. So that was not something that was, it was, brainstorming kind of ideas, but nothing,
Okay, so, just again, because I need to break it down for myself, integrated preschool at Harwich, and then which will serve, children with disabilities and then peers as well, in more of an integrated classroom experience than we've had before. And then more inclusion, I guess I would say, but they're still going to have that diversified skill level each level's going to need.
For this type of program?
For the one in Harwich.
The Harwich is solely the integrated preschool as it is now. If that's not changing.
Nothing's changing.
The only thing we're changing is the Chatham student coming to Harwich versus the original recommendation was the Harwich program be held in Chatham.
Okay.
The integrated preschool program, there are absolutely no changes to the purpose and how it operates.
So as of right now, there's one student from Chatham that would go to Harwich for the integrated preschool program because the program in Chatham does not meet the needs of that one student?
Well, it might. Again, that's to be determined, right? Because the placement is based on the IEP.
Okay.
So if the child could be serviced with the placement in Chatham, in whatever program is designed and makes sense to meet their needs, it may happen and could be an option. It could also be an option for some of the Harwich students that are integrated to choose this program as well. It just really depends on the placement needs.
So I guess that's my next question. Do you get to choose which one you go to if you don't fit in a certain box of what your needs are?
Yeah.
And then how do you select the peers
I think
for
the
each
recommendation in
location?
the original PEG was to have some sort of criteria of the needs. Similar to years ago, we had a program in Harwich that was a intensive program for students with similar needs as was referenced in the grant. And there was kind of almost like a criteria type of thing because we're looking for the students that we're not capturing right now. Right? There's kiddos in our community, and I think we keep talking about this, we're not really sure how many. Are there 4? Are there 15? I don't know. We have to do that aren't having high-quality instructional preschool for some reason, whether it's cost, whether it's transportation, whether it's whatever. So that would determine some of the choices that families would have. You have to look at it as two pathways, almost like the pathways of education that we're looking at. You have pathways and choices for all students, but there would probably have to be some sort of hierarchical placement because we are looking not to compete again with our community partners, not to be doing those things. We want to be a collaborative partner and making sure we're meeting the needs of all students.
So for example, an ELL student would work in the Chatham program?
It just depends. It's I can't tell you because it just depends on their needs. Again, and this program's not developed yet, but if they were an L student with SWD that needed an integrated preschool, the best pathway for them would be the integrated preschool.
The integrated preschool in Harwich. I know we haven't done our finance subcommittee update, but based on our conversations at our meeting on Monday, my understand, again, it's a lot, but my understanding, and Tina, I don't know if you remember, but my understanding was that that's what the Chatham program was aiming to look at.
There's a sense that it should be something involving a multilingual strength. I mean, our multilingual numbers in our community is a huge asset, and we celebrate that, right? But we know that there's disparate achievement scores with multilingual students who do not attend preschool. So that would be a criteria that we would want to make sure, and we also know just anecdotally from the principals and things like that, that most of the students that do not attend a preschool program, whether it's community partnership or our program, are multilingual. So yes, that's the thought, but it hasn't been developed for sure.
Okay, and then the only other thing I have as if there's more. I know that there's concerns out there, you have a student in Harwich, but they're going to be, for whatever reasons, they're going to be going to the Chatham pre-K program, busing, length of time on buses, things like that, and we haven't talked about it. I don't think it's, it's under an hour regardless, where we are. There's other areas, certainly even on the Cape and in the city, that it's much longer than that. It's nothing it's not crazy in my mind, but I know it's been a topic and a concern.
The community partnership, the community peer programming would still be available in Harwich. So that would also be another pathway for Harwich families if they weren't integrated and they wanted to stay in Harwich. The community program and our community partners are still available.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to rain on your parade. I just want to clarify something regarding Chatham and Harwich. We have had for many years, Chatham students, because of the service need, go to Harwich, and Harwich students go to Chatham. So I just want to be really clear, this is not new to have that kind of program, right? So we currently have students that go to both, right? Because we have, at Chatham Elementary, we have an intensive program called SEAL, because I like the nautical stuff, but that isn't necessarily served well in our ISLE program. So we, if you remember correctly, a couple of years ago, opened up SEAL, right? So we have kids from Harwich that are served better in that program, as we have children who are better served in Harwich ISLE program. Okay, so I just want to make sure, it's just not a new thing for us to transport children between the two towns. So, that's okay. Go ahead. Brad?
Robin, for ELL, just looking, did you say how many students right now we have an idea that would be in Chatham?
So as far as how big would the program be?
Yeah, how large would it be? Second part of that would be, how large would it have to be in order to be effective, and kind of what's the minimum?
Yes, and again, I don't have those numbers yet. This is just as we have been having these conversations since the strategic plan has been developed and having these conversations budgetarily and from the community. It's a really good time to start really thinking that through. In the PEG grant, the original goal was for the first pilot program to have 20 students, one teacher, one paraprofessional. If we loosely go off of that, it seems like a lot to me in a pre-K program. But
is there a minimum that would, because we don't know what that number would be, is there a minimum threshold that may be ineffective? And I mean, obviously one person, one child, but I mean, is there a minimum?
In my opinion, if we service one more child that we're not servicing now, is valuable, but I don't know if that would be your stance on that. But to me, it's valuable for missing any kids out there that really could have a valuable, high-quality instructional programming. And again, it might not necessarily, I'll just repeat this again, like the PEG grant originally did not say it had to be public programming. It did say that we might want to work better with our community partners to find some way to make sure that they pick up. I know there's community partners right now that have space. So maybe there's some public-private programming. The towns have done a great job with vouchers and things like that for, preschool and things like that. But maybe there's a step we can go farther for that. So again, I know this is a lot of up there kind of thinking, but I just think it's a really good opportunity that we should be looking at, considering, that everybody really has a determined want and desire for a good preschool programming.
So I think it's great to have this conversation. I am a huge proponent of children having quality preschool experiences. But just for clarity's sake, as of right now, the recommendation is to have the integrated preschools at Harwich. There is no preschool at Chatham right now.
For next year.
For next year.
Yes.
So this is something that is a process to start thinking about how to bring another preschool opportunity to our district, potentially in the space at Chatham, but as of right now, for 25-26, there would not be a preschool in Chatham.
Well, I think here in the budgetary process, right? Again, I've been out a couple days.
Me too.
But there is a placeholder for this to happen.
In case it's possible.
Right. Should you decide the programming for the integrated, because that is under your purview, and then should you decide the budget makes sense to hold that place value, then we will hold that place value and get to work.
and see what we have.
So there is a possibility that
Possibility.
there
Yes.
could
And
be
again,
something in
we
Chatham.
started having these conversations last year when the strategic plan came out because it was so important.
Right,
Yeah.
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 Okay, I just want it on the table.
So I guess in one way, it would be continuing to be able to provide some type of a pre-K program in Chatham, because I know that's important to people who live in Chatham. Not necessarily that their child is going to go to the Chatham preschool, but it does kind of still have that feel, I guess, or essence and opportunity if, it should arise. Second is that I know when we first talked at the beginning of budget season, we were talking about cost savings by having it all under one roof in Harwich. And this is now going to actually increase the budget for having this line item, more specifically for Chatham, which is something we'll talk about in our finance report as well, that there'll be implications of that, but it'd be a beneficial program for the district as a whole.
Well, we'll have to determine the needs, yes.
Right.
But yes.
Okay.
If we determine a need, yes, I would
Okay.
recommend that.
Thank you.
So just to kind of put some things into context here, I think one of the great things that's happened in the last few years in both of our communities is that both towns have voted a meeting to support funds so that families can access preschool. We also know that we have some families that, despite the fact that there's money out there from the towns to support their child going to preschool, that there's some kids that aren't accessing that. And I think part of this, what we need to go and do some investigation is who and why.
Right.
What we understand anecdotally at the moment is that a disproportionate number may actually have English language learner needs. And, so if we can meet those children and those families in a program that they can access, because again, when Robin, one of her slides, talks about access, it talks about those things. When we initially came together as Monomoy, there was a program at Harwich that was the Make Way for Kids that had a criteria that they followed on who had the slots. That was really meant to go get children who weren't accessing preschools into a preschool setting. There was an integrated preschool that was happening at Harwich Public Schools and this other program. I think, what Robin, really emphasizes in these slides, we have a strategic opportunity. We've had something on our strategic plan to go and look at who's not accessing preschool. How can we help every child in this district be better ready for kindergarten? That's the concept. But again, I think we're just trying to flesh this one out. If we do put a program at Chatham Elementary School, the way the regional agreement works, that program comes out of, it gets funded by Chatham, so we have to go and explain that in our presentations of the budget to Chatham. But it doesn't mean that it's exclusively for children from Chatham. So if it were to be a language-based program as one of the criteria, or whatever the criteria for the program is, and a family and a child from Harwich meets that, of course, we'd go and have them there. But there's so many logistics to work out.
Sure.
But again, it's just how can we try to get as many children in our two towns accessing preschool? And in two towns that we've been really blessed to have the money that town meetings have approved to go and have families access it, yet still some children aren't getting those experiences to get them better ready for kindergarten.
Thank you.
Do we have to vote on this tonight? It just seems like there's still a whole lot of concern and questions from the public, and some of the stuff we're seeing for the first time.
I agree with you, and that's my question.
Yeah.
I know, Scott, I don't know what the deadline is, but I think all of us need to really sit down and process this.
While I don't think you need to go and, how about this? I would strongly recommend that you vote to have the integrated preschool at Harwich Elementary. Okay? I think the logistics on whether or not we operate a program. I think the development of this one is one that I don't think you need to vote tonight to move forward with that program. It is, when Michael gives gives the budget presentation, the numbers there, we can always cut the number out, like we can not run the program, and the budget would just get that much smaller down the road, which there's many a time that we're cutting something out of the budget as it moves forward. But the budget, as Michael will present it, has the integrated preschool at Harwich Elementary, and it has a placeholder to explore a program at Chatham Elementary for kids, really trying to focus on doing an assessment of who's not accessing preschool and how can we go and help meet those children and the families to go and help them have their children in a preschool and have their child better kindergarten ready.
So I appreciate all that. I guess my question, and I'm thinking through the questions I received from the public. So originally, I guess, 2 weeks ago, so we were looking at the integrated preschool being in Chatham, and now we're going to put it in Harwich, which I personally think is the right thing to do. And I guess my question is, and this sounds great, I like the vision of this, but I don't know, I do think we have to process it, because why didn't we hear about this 2 weeks ago? Why, 2 weeks ago, if it was going to be at Chatham, then why weren't we talking about this maybe for Harwich? I guess it's just kind of hitting us, and I understand it. I understand the vision. I think it's great. It's just I feel like it's just kind of come out of the blue.
I would say, when we last met, when we were initially developing a budget, a preschool program was sitting over in Chatham. The decision, or at least the tenor at the table, was to move the preschool back over to Harwich, which had us sort of moving funding that was over here over to Harwich Elementary School. And that's where I looked at, we have this strategic opportunity that I do think that the budget in Chatham can support it. Again, you have to keep in mind how the regional agreement's set up, that programs that are happening at Chatham Elementary School are funded by Chatham, and programs that are happening at Harwich by Harwich. So it allows, we saw this as a strategic opportunity that we now have this empty classroom space at Chatham. We had already in the initial budget, that initial draft that we were working on 2 weeks ago had funding there. So we looked at why not at least explore this, we kind of looked at it opening up this opportunity to go and explore something that we've been talking about for over 3 years, in terms of the strategic plan.
And I understand that. I guess, let's just say hypothetically, we say yes to this. Chatham Select Board hasn't even heard it. So I guess I feel like we're kind of jumping the gun. Yeah.
Jackie? I would just kind of piggyback on what Tina's saying, and I feel like a little bit we're ahead of ourselves, because Tina and I, we've all reviewed the budget, but Tina and I have had a little bit more because we were at the Finance Subcommittee meeting as well. So I think that when Michael presents the budget and we get to this specific item, we can really, because I don't want to move off the topic of the pre-K program too much, because we could very easily. And I see it as two separate things. One is, here's the pre-K program, this is what it looks like, this is, new presentation, we're looking at, well, how can we, in my mind, it's how can we continue to have some type of a preschool program in the town of Chatham, and in my mind, it's in what does that look like, and here's this model that we came up with in 2016 that was kind of taking off, we've got this ready-to-go model, will it work? I think it's tough because we don't have a lot of measurable information, and it comes with a price tag. So I guess when we get to the budget conversation, it's do you put in a holding place? Do you vote for the program because you like it, and you think it's going to be good, and it's going to be effective, right? And then do you vote the budget, including that price tag, intending that it's successful and it's going to work? And then if you don't have enough students to support the program, because I hear that's, I think, part of the question, we have that flagged in there, then where do we move those monies? The other is that Tina's right, we've already presented to the town of Chatham the 16th of December, the 17th of December, and then we were just in Harwich on Monday. Chatham hasn't heard this yet, and while it's a small price tag, I would say, boldly, it's going to be impacting Chatham more so than Harwich, and I know a lot impacts Harwich, often, but I just think that I've got to look at it two separate things, whether or not I support the preschool program in Chatham and with integrated in Harwich, and then what's that budget item look like, and without measurables, how do I support that line item if we're not quite sure what's going to happen? So that's where I'm at.
This is just one point of clarification, and no offense to my distinguished select board member behind me, but we always go present our budget recommendations to the school committee first, and then go from here to the select boards. So the presentations that select boards have had have nothing to do with the FY26 budget, other than talking about capital aspects of the FY26 budget. So Michael's next presentation is the FY26 budget, which tonight we have to vote, because tonight what we vote for the FY26 budget is the budget that gets sent out to the towns, gets posted in the libraries as our draft budget for next year.
And that is my concern. Yeah, and again, I'm not going to beat this home, but I feel like 2 weeks ago, we could have been talking about this, but it never came up. And I mean, yes, we were at the finance committee, yes, we got a little bit of this, but I don't know. I just feel like I have to say that I like the idea, I just feel like it should have come 2 weeks ago. That's my only thing. Yeah.
Ryan, sorry.
It's just too drastic of a change too soon to vote on, in my opinion.
So how do we move forward if we don't have comfortability with a vote on the preschool tonight?
So I could say, I would again say, you can vote on where you locate the integrated preschool and build that into the budget. When Michael gives the presentation, there's, I believe, a placeholder that you'll see in the presentation for this initiative at Chatham Elementary School. You can vote the budget less that initiative.
Yes.
I mean, I do feel a responsibility tonight to vote on the integrated preschool. I do feel that vote can be taken. This one, I don't know. I have to sit and listen to Michael's thick presentation, also knowing we have a deadline to make this budget vote because of, I guess, the way the state guidelines are written. So I would say, I mean, for myself, that we can vote on the Harwich preschool piece of it. This one, I don't know, I have to sit with for a little bit.
I feel also that we can vote on Harwich.
Yeah.
Integrated, and I think you bite the elephant, eat the elephant one bite at a time kind of thing, and put Chatham off, but make the decision on Harwich. And then as we'll go through, we'll be able to take a look to see the impact of Chatham. But the Harwich, I don't know what else, and understanding, what Tina said, and it's kind of come up quick, and it's been in action and a lot of movement on it. But I don't know that if we vote on it in 2 weeks, what we're going to know more. So.
Any other questions? No? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'm going to make the motion that we move to make the integrated preschool in Harwich Elementary School.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay.
Passes.
So the next item on the agenda is the competency determination requirements for MRHS graduation.
You get me again. So I'm going to try to make it through. Here we go. So as you know, at the election this year, the state, I don't have a slide for this. This is just informational for you all. So we have to talk about the competency requirement and the graduation requirement as far as how it pertains to Monomoy Regional School District. Because at the election this past year, the state voters have decided that, well, let me back up a little bit. We just want to provide some information to the committee and the community regarding some changes of the graduation requirements due to that election. So in statute, in the state of Massachusetts, graduates for Massachusetts public schools have to complete two requirements. One is called the competency determination, and one is called the graduation requirements. The graduation requirements are created by the local districts. So your graduation requirements are for Monomoy Regional School District are written in the core background. They're included in the high school handbook, and you can see them there. And so those requirements, all students must obtain, show mastery of, in order to graduate from Monomoy Regional School District, and that's within our purview. The competency requirement, the second part of the graduation requirement, was ultimately before the election established by the state. So the state basically said that all students needed to show mastery. It really is really exciting. Mastery of 10th grade curriculum and standards frameworks by showing their mastery of those frameworks on the MCAS in the areas of ELA, mathematics, and science. So in the past, that's what we've done. If a student has showed the mastery by taking the MCAS, understand that the proficiency level is there, we have certified them, they've completed that part of the graduation requirement. Once they complete the Mass Core and Monomoy graduation requirements, those two things come together and they receive a graduation certificate from Monomoy Regional District. What the voters decided in November was in the competency determination that MCAS could no longer be the item that we use in order to say, yes, this student has received that 10th grade mastery of the standards and the frameworks. So MCAS now cannot be used, well, by the state in order to show mastery of the 10th grade frameworks and curriculum. So essentially what it says to us, I just want to be clear, our Monomoy Regional School District graduation requirements pathway have not changed. They're staying the same. What we need to do now, because of the election, is find a way to determine within our district, because it's basically moved it now into our purview, to say, how do we determine mastery of 10th grade curriculum framework standards, and what does that look like? What are the descriptors of that? Okay? So two pathways come together for a student to graduate. So in order to think about this, the recommendation has been from the state that the districts work very quickly to determine what that mastery looks like. What's the expectation? Like, what in Monomoy would we say is mastery of 10th grade frameworks in those three areas? Mathematics, science, technology, and ELA, and maybe something else. It's totally in our control now. So they also have been recommending that we move quickly for our 2025 graduates. Because it's only January, and here we go. So I just want to be clear about that too. So if a student is graduating in June of 2025 and they have previously earned the competency determination, so they have it already from their 10th grade year, they're in 12th grade now, they complete the Monomoy graduation requirements, they're all set. We're not worried about them for 2025 June, okay? What we're thinking about now is what are we going to do for the kids who did not show mastery on the MCAS because we can't use that anymore. Normally they'd retest, they take it again, we do some planning for them, programming, things like that to make sure that we build them to that mastery expectation, and we would hopefully get them there so they could graduate on time or within the 5th year. The state now is saying, okay, what does that look like, Monomoy? So the reason why I wanted to explain that to you is because it's very complicated, and it's caused districts all over the state to be in this kind of like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Like, what does this look like? Why do we have to do this? So what our recommendation, and letting you guys know, is we have a number of graduates, or hopeful potential graduates, that we need to consider that mastery requirement, that secondary mastery requirement. So we will be asking the policy subcommittee to come together and be thinking about whether or not this should be policy this year. It is a recommendation of the state that we have a 2025 policy to determine what that competency determination certification looks like. That's totally up to the policy committee. We have some examples from around the state. We have some recommendations from the high school. We have been talking about it, but we are on the agenda for the policy subcommittee to consider that as a 2025 policy for this continuing year, for the students who have not reached that competency determination to date. The other thing that we want to just keep in mind, though, is that this is new. I mean, it just started, it just came into effect, and there might need to be some changes in the future as well. So, we might write a policy for this year's graduates because it's a small number of kiddos that we're thinking about, that we need to figure out whether they should graduate on time or not, what do we need to do to prepare them if they don't, those type of things. Where do we go in the 5th year? But we also have to be looking out to 26 and 27 and 28. What does this look like in the long term? And for the state, part of this is it's so new to them that they're not sure if they're going to have a hand in it eventually, or if something's going to happen at the statute level, or whatever is that. So there's a couple of things that I just want to be clear about. We need to align our procedures and possibly our policy to meet the new law language. That's first and foremost. The recommendation is to do that through a policy. That will be up to the policy subcommittee to decide. If the policy subcommittee does decide to do that, we will be bringing that, and they did decide to draft a policy for this year or beyond, then we will be bringing that to the school committee for your consideration in a very timely manner. Obviously, we have graduates in June. The other thing I want to be clear about is this does not take away MCAS. MCAS is still a federal and state requirement. So students will still be taking MCAS as they always did. It is still part of the accountability methods at the State Department specifically, but also for federal government monies, including Title I and grant funding. So I just want to be clear about that too. And then, again, make sure the current graduates, I don't want people to panic, like, it's changing for the June 2025. It's a small group of students that we really want to make sure that if they've shown mastery of their 10th grade standards by the time they graduate, they should graduate, and make sure that we have clarity in that. Okay.
Any questions?
Exciting things to tell you today.
Thank you, Robin.
You're welcome. I'm good to go.
Next up is our fiscal '26 budget discussion.
Good evening, school committee. I'm just going to get my slides up. Good evening, school committee. Michael McMillan, school business manager. Pleased to be in front of you this evening to present an update on our FY26 budget and ask for your approval of a budget so that we can then take that and share it with the towns as we discussed earlier. So it's kind of a little difficult to see on this. So this is the current draft of the budget. So the only change from last time we presented, so we presented just before Christmas, and since then, and kind of one of the messages I gave you then was things might change. We've got health insurance and state funding numbers still come out. We still don't have those. And In a perfect world, we wouldn't be making any decisions on the budget yet until we have a greater degree of certainty about some of those critical figures. However, it's actually the regional agreement says that before January 15th, we have to share a draft budget with both towns, put a copy in the libraries, so that that information is available to them, and understandably, because the towns are starting to do their planning for their budget. So that's why we're in this situation where we're voting, and it does seem early in the process. And we do tend to go through this every year, because when the state numbers come out, it can change the budget and the assessments drastically. So it's kind of a difficult process to go through, but this is where we're at. So right now, the budget is $49,607,033. It is an increase of $151,671. There's two parts to that change. One is we reduced the budget by $5,000, so we took out the hoop house. So that's not a major change. We're hoping that the hoop house will be able to be funded through a grant that we're applying for with the food service department. So it's a small change, but that's part of the change. And the other part is adding 2 positions related to the discussion earlier this evening about the pre-K initiative. And so that's 1 teacher FTE and 1 instructional assistant FTE. It also includes an assumption I've made around health insurance. So that's why it's kind of higher than you might expect. So that total increase is over $3 million, just shy of $3.1 million, and 6.7%. So I've actually only got a few slides this evening. So this is largely unchanged from the last time I spoke. Really, this is just the key drivers. So we know property insurance, the budget requests, which we'll come on to, staffing around, primarily around our contractual salary increases, an assumption we've made about where custodial contract negotiations will end up. Health insurance, and that's one of the other numbers that can change. So right now, we're assuming a 10% increase in health insurance. It may not end up being that much. And just so you're aware, the health insurance is also assessed to the town, so the Chatham Elementary School and the Harwich Elementary Schools include their health insurance numbers. So that's another way in which the assessments can be impacted as these numbers come in differently. And the last thing is building maintenance. So, and we're going to talk about that, I'm sure, in one of my other presentations this evening, but building maintenance has gone up a lot in the last few years. I've only got it up, I'm estimating it gone up just shy of $100,000 or $80,000. So it's kind of starting to plateau, I think, because we've increased it a lot, and now we're closer to where we need to be on an ongoing basis to maintain the buildings that we have. So these are the budget requests. There's just 2 changes really way at the bottom. One is to add, to reduce the $5,000 for the hoop house, and the other one is to add the position changes at Chatham Elementary School. So the other, and this is very similar to the slide we presented in the last budget. So the last budget presentation. So we do have some savings planned as part of this budget. We are reducing 2 classroom teacher positions, one at Harwich Elementary School and one at the middle school, and that's through reduction of reduction of sections as class sizes go down. We're able to condense sections and reduce 2 positions. So that helps to offset those costs. And that's directly driven by enrollment. And then the other reduction is so with Harwich Elementary School hosting the integrated pre-K program in its entirety, that allows us to reduce the number of positions. I should say, that's driven by enrollment. So that wasn't necessarily, we didn't reduce in order to save money. It was the size of the classes are such that we don't need as many teachers in those positions. So, the effect is it makes savings, but it's really enrollment that's driving that decision.
Again, this is something you saw last time, apologies for the repetition, but just so you're aware, we have currently budgeting about $6.6 million in revenue from the state and other sources in order to offset the budget. So we start with the budget, we then have that revenue, which reduces how much the towns have to pay for, and what's left gets split up to the two towns. I've made so I have a absurdly complicated spreadsheet that suggests a $20,000 change in our Chapter 70 funding. Maybe end up being differently depending on where the state budget ends up, depending on other factors that go into calculating Chapter 70, which includes the value of property in both towns and foundation enrollment. We're continuing to use $800,000 from our excess and deficiency. So the excess and deficiency is a bit like free cash that towns have. So it's the money that's certified by the state, and it's money that we're allowed to draw on to offset assessments. So we're using $800,000. I think our excess and deficiency, our auditor has completed the audit, is with the state now to be certified. It's around 2.5 million, which is slightly more than it was last year, so I think it's fine to continue to use $800,000. Probably won't be able to do that forever, but I think it's fine for now. And then otherwise, they're relatively modest increases expected, except in transportation, where we have a significant surplus from last year, or from a couple of years ago, that we're allowed now to use to offset the budget. So overall, that's to 4.1%, but that's almost entirely made up by transportation. So fingers crossed, the state numbers are a little better than we're expecting, but they can also be worse. So we really wait and see until the end of January. Normally around the end of January is when we'll get that information from the state. So this is where, with all that information, so basically what's changed since we last presented is we've honed in one scenario, which is the pre-K being at Harwich Elementary School in its entirety. Plus we've added the pre-K initiative, which would add the positions at Chatham Elementary School. So that's the scenario that we're using, and this is the way that breaks down. So you start, if you see that little blue line at the top that says, so we start with that $49,607,000. We then take off that revenue, which is $6.6 million, and you end up with a little over $43 million to be split between the two towns. Then, using this assessment formula, you end up with the $31,888,142 for Harwich and $11,130,839 for Chatham. 6.73% and a 7.97% increase respectively. So, I think a lot of that information you already had, or we covered in just in the last a couple of presentations ago, but that's how it kind of all comes together. So just the last couple of slides. So I just put this chart just shows you how the budgets have changed and how we've paid for the budgets and how that's changed over the last few years. So this is, as you can see, so you've got the grey block at the bottom is Harwich Elementary, Town of Harwich assessment. Then the light blue is Town of Chatham's assessment. You have a little yellow in there for excess and deficiency, and the dark blue is state funding. So in this case, because the state funding does not go up as much as the overall budget, that means the percentage increase for the towns has to be higher. So that's why you have a little over 6.7% for Harwich and the 8% increase for Chatham. So the rest of the process, I'm just going to the next slide. So almost impossible to read in that slide, I apologise. But basically, where we're at now is with your approval, we would share this information with the towns. We would then be scheduled by the towns to come in and present to them on the budget, so they could find out more information about why we're asking for the assessments we are. We would then have a further and then once those are scheduled, probably not before our next school committee meeting, but we will have also a public hearing of the budget on February 13th when members of the public, and that is a statutory legal requirement to do that. And then normally we have a final vote of the budget around March 13th, and then that's what would eventually go to town meeting. But of course, lots can change in between now and then, and even beyond, as we go back and forth in discussions with the town and information that we receive from the state. before we get to town meeting.
I can just go through the slides and just share, while Michael was talking, I was just crunching the numbers. If we pull
I have that.
the program out, so if we were to pull off of his slide 2 for the budget, if we were to pull the 151,671 out of the FY26 budget, it becomes a 6.33% increase over FY25. And then if we were to jump to the punchline slide, which is the draft assessments on page 7, it does not impact the Harwich assessment. The Harwich assessment would remain a $31,888,142, which is a 6.73% increase. The Chatham assessment would go down to $10,979,168, which is a 6.50% increase.
Look, our numbers match.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah. I was just double checking the match before I revealed my answers.
My iPhone worked pretty well.
Yeah. And so that's just exactly 6.3, although we can delete this box. So ignore that red box, but yes, so 6.3% increase and the change in the Chatham assessment. So, any questions or?
Jackie. Thanks. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Again, this week.
Yes, nice to
Spending a
see you
lot of
again.
time together. A few different things. First, to just refresh my memory, the English language teacher in the high school, and then the district English language teacher, these are ELL teachers.
Yeah.
We have a district one to spread out amongst the middle school and the 2 elementary schools, is that correct? And then the high school one just specifically has one, there's just 2 large line items, that's why I'm looking.
Yeah, so the high school, so we know we have a specific need at the high school, and the district one is to help kind of support anywhere in the district where we have additional needs, because often EL is driven by new enrollment, so that's to help new enrollment as that appears.
So it's anticipated?
Yeah.
But not like, it's projected, but not necessarily something we need
So we definitely have the need right now.
for the high school one?
For the high school and across the district.
Okay.
It's kind of across the district.
Okay, and then can you just remind me what the culture, and then I'm not done, the culture and climate team is? Don't remember.
Culture and climate team is at the
Yeah.
middle school,
Yeah.
and it's a group that works with the principal there to support the climate and culture of the middle school teachers and students.
Okay, all right, great. And then my other question, I guess, or I guess my comment is regarding the increase to the overall budget, and then the information that Scott just shared. I think my feedback on that, why am I ringing? No. I think my feedback on that, is, it's over by Ryan. I think as a district, we need to do what's in the best interest of the students. My confusion lies in what I'm getting, and I'm sure I'm going to get more emails tomorrow, which I hopefully do, which is going to give me more information about how folks felt about tonight's meeting, because what I can't extrapolate out is, I know that there's families that are, it's impacting Harwich, because they're the ones that have the pre-K students, and then there's some intensive students and integrated students that already go to the Harwich school for services. So what I'm looking at is, what I'm hearing and reading is, we want a separate 3rd and 4th grade, and then some of the other things we heard tonight were, we want to make sure that the services our children were getting before, now that we're not, we're kind of mixing all the students now. It seems like a little bit more, and Melissa, forgive me, but it seems like, and some of the emails that I read, and then what I was hearing tonight, is that, I mean, and maybe I'm wrong, Melissa, are the programs still exactly the way they were before? We're just moving one student from Chatham?
So the only thing that we've looked at, because in order to make the regulatory requirements for the number of kids in the preschool with special needs, is because there were not enough 4-year-olds, developmentally, we looked at the 4-year-olds that were closer to the 3-year-old, or developmentally would do well with that mixed one session of 3-year-olds. So you have an AM session that's right now just 2 3-year-olds, which allows any new to be on that very low end of 2, beginning 3.
And that's different than what we've done in the past.
No, we've integrated students before.
We have.
Oh my gosh, no, we've done that.
So there's nothing new that's changing. That's what I need to
Oh, it's not
understand.
changing, no, we've
Because it
had
feels like
children in the 3 or 4-year-old
the way the
groups.
classrooms are set up is going to be changing, and that's the impression that I'm getting. But then when I listen to you, I'm like, that's not what's happening, so I just...
No, we've tried to have 3-year-old sessions and 4-year-old sessions, but what we've had to do, quite frankly, is when a 4-year-old comes in new and they're at the, that first end of it, we've placed them in the 3-year-old, or we've had too many 3-year-olds and we've placed them in the 4-year-old. That's been happening forever. It happens in any preschool. Oh, it's no.
Thursday program, and then they're with the bigger kids,
No.
Okay, so that, I just want to make sure that what the community is seeing and hearing and what they want for the students is reflected in the budget. So if we have to if we have the integrated preschool, which we voted on for Harwich, I just want to fully understand and make sure that that's in the best interest. Regarding the increase of $151,000, which directly impacts the town of Chatham, which is fine, except that it doesn't necessarily address if there's concern of whether we do or don't have a pre-K in Chatham anymore. And I wonder what I understand the importance of the program because I was here when we started when Robin started that in 2016. I was here before that. So I've been through this and I've seen it start. So I understand the importance of it. I don't know, I'm just struggling there because I know what's ahead and I'm thinking about all the other moving pieces and more that we have to talk about, and this is the biggest increase I think we've had. So regardless of what town it is, I'm just conscientious of that, and whether at this time without more information it validates the increase right now this year, because that money may need to be asked of the town for other reasons we don't know about yet. So I don't know, just off the cuff. I know you appreciate it.
Michael, refresh my memory, is the list of budget requests on page 4, are those in order of what we considered priority?
So we said it's a rough priority. So just because there are different value amounts, sometimes, depending on how the health insurance comes out and depends how the state funding formulas come out and the amount of Chapter 70 funding we get, we might be able to afford something that's lower down the list, but not something that's higher up the list because it's just more money. But generally, we put them in a kind of roughly priority order. That said, it didn't put the new pre-K initiative, I just put that at the bottom so as not to confuse everybody.
But everything else, though, and understanding that the money, maybe there's 40,000, some 100,000 can't be done, but other than that, aside from dollars, that would be the priority in terms of need. Okay.
So for clarification on the list here, so the restorative justice professional development high school, that is the position, is that the position that we had worked in? Like, we had 2 restorative justice positions, right? So is this the high school one? And if so, where's the middle school one?
So this is I'm just looking for...
Or this is professional development, okay, all right.
Yeah,
I gotcha, okay, okay.
Good, yeah.
And then that 65,000, that development's going to be split?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, I misread that then, all right.
So Michael, you need a vote tonight.
Yes.
I have another question. So, and I always try to remember this every year. So with budgets, because you've already
shared that things change.
Yeah.
Healthcare, all these numbers. So if, just a hypothetical, because I think when I go back to this preschool thing, or at least, and I'll just speak for myself, it's not that I'm opposed to what we saw, it just, there it is. And so if one possibility would be to vote and keep it in for now, do we have the opportunity in 2 weeks or whatever our date is to continue to have a conversation to take it out? Can we do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Up until we kind of send it off to the Times.
Okay.
In March, and actually even after that, depending on the feedback we get from the Times and so on, I mean, the budgets can be changed right up until there.
Okay, so we can take anything out, okay,
And again, I'm going to piggyback on Tina on that, and that is where that makes me more comfortable, because I feel like where we haven't necessarily voted the pre-K program in, that we talked about today, because we need a little bit more time, I would like to hear a little bit more from feedback from the community after this meeting, selectmen, et cetera, before I vote on the actual program. But if we can leave it as a placeholder, because it's always better to put something in and then take it out or move it around, I would definitely be much more comfortable with that. And then that way we still have the opportunity to do it and leave that item in there.
I agree with Jackie's saying, because I think it's a really great idea in moving, potentially really moving us forward, having the ELL in Chatham. But again, this gives us the flexibility, like any budget proposal. You propose it, you get feedback, and then that's the other question in terms of that I asked about the priorities, because inevitably some things may have to be removed, even though they're needed. But again, can only necessarily sometimes only be a certain amount of money. But I like the idea of being able to keep it in and having the flexibility tonight.
Scott?
And I just want to take full blame or full credit, one or the other. Yeah, so Tina was asking, well, why weren't we talking about this before? And I'll tell you, when the conversations about the slides that you saw up there took place, right after we had our last meeting, I'm driving home, calling poor Robin Millen at the same time, saying, well, it looks like the consensus at the table just freed up a preschool classroom at Chatham Elementary School. I'd like to start brainstorming how we can make the most good out of that free classroom. Because we've been talking about how can we support families that aren't accessing preschool, and now we have this free preschool classroom available at Chatham Elementary School, and then the brainstorming began, and that's there's a lot of legwork that would need to happen between now and March. Like, we need to go and do that needs assessment and figure out who would be in this, and how can we make the best good. But that's why we kind of built it in as this placeholder for these discussions.
And I understand that. I guess, I don't want to go back because we've already moved on from the discussion, but I guess my thought was, well, depending if it went the other way, would there have been a classroom freeing up at Harwich? I mean, would it have, I guess that's where I was going with that, because if we moved it to Chatham, which was the initial proposal, then I think there's a classroom or whatever over at Harwich. So that's where I was going. Like, why didn't this come up before?
And one of the things, at least in my head, I'm concerned about how tight space can be at Harwich Elementary, and we also have a community partner in the Y over there that I would love to see the Y continue to expand and accommodate more and more families, because it is serving purpose, and it is making, so we're able to go and use free classroom space over at Harwich Elementary School for the greater good. It's just the conversation at the table freed up a preschool classroom space at Chatham Elementary. So the brainstorming began on, okay, now how can we use that for the greater good?
Any other questions? All right.
Motion?
Are we done with motion?
Yes, we do. We have to.
Okay.
So what's the total?
Can we have a motion?
Yeah, with it, yeah, all right, good.
figuring it out.
I will make a motion that we accept this draft budget of $49,607,033.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Betty. My only question to that would be, do we still have to state in the motion that leaving a placeholder for, like specify that it's a placeholder? Or are you saying, because we haven't voted on the pre-K program, so it's...
I would probably, why would we need a place, I mean, because we've got healthcare insurance placeholding, we didn't take a special motion for that, so I think.
We don't need to articulate that.
Everything right now is just...
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to make the placeholder.
Everything's a placeholder.
I just wanted to make sure the public was clear with that.
We can always come down.
Yeah, because we can
You can't go up.
down. We just need more, yeah.
Can go down, cannot go up.
Correct.
Exactly. Yeah.
Michael's saying it can go up. Do we want it to go up?
Health insurance is higher.
Like, we need to go home.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Scott?
And then just one more just point of clarification. This program in Chatham is not taking from Harwich. You know, this is an addition, add-on, not diverting resources away. That's the intent, is to, so I don't want to have people think that, oh, if something does happen in Chatham, it's taking from a preschool program in Harwich.
Yeah, I think I understood that, yeah.
Anything else? We ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It passes. Thank you, Mr.
It's a draft budget.
Draft budget, yes. Next up is formalizing the middle school building committee, membership, organization, and purpose.
So this next agenda item is about the building committee that we've created for the middle school building project. And there's a memo in your handout just explaining some of the background and the timeline for that committee. So normally when you're doing a new build of a school, especially if you do it with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, one of their requirements is you have a school building committee to kind of oversee the project with such a large scale one. However, it's not required for smaller school projects. However, given the level of complexity around the siding project and the possible roof project that we see coming down the line and everything else that's going on at the middle school, which we will discuss, the superintendent thought it was a good idea for us to have a building committee set up with representation from construction professionals who live in the two towns and family members and the staff as well to be on that committee to help oversee the projects. So we had the first meeting of that committee on Tuesday this week, and at that point the superintendent, who I'm sure will speak to further, proposed to the committee that we ask the school committee that this business committee can be a subcommittee of the school committee. And that's what this vote would make happen.
So I have a question, so a subcommittee, is it I guess in my mind, a subcommittee is a permanent, is it ad hoc, or is it, because it's not going to be a forever committee, right? Or, maybe I'm just picking words, but.
Yeah, so that was actually discussed at the table.
Oh, okay.
Is this going to be a permanent Monomoy building committee or not? And I told the group that we should be really looking at this to be just a middle school focus. It may mean, it may down the road need to sort of break off, and I imagine that in the not too distant future, many of the conversations that we're having at the middle school are going to need to be happening at Chatham Elementary School, which was renovated around the same time. But but at the moment, this is really just a group that's focused on Harwich and Chatham. One of the things that that we also have heard is, hey, it would be good to have representation from teachers on that. I think about a third of this building committee are parents have children in the district. So I reached out to Matt Barnes, who's from Chatham. He's a middle school teacher. Matt's excited to be on the building committee, and Emily Milan from Harwich. Emily is our librarian, but it's a long time history in Harwich as one of the town librarians. So what we had discussed at the table is to have this be accepted by the school committee as their middle school building/renovation committee, and to have the administrators that are there be in an advisory role, but to really treat this the same way that we treated the building committee that we had as a school district for this building, where it was half Harwich, half Chatham. We had co-chairs, a co-chair, one chair, one of the co-chairs from Harwich, one of the co-chairs from Chatham. We have Peter Troy, who actually was the former chair of the building committee for the renovation and expansion at Chatham all those years ago. He's volunteered to be one of the co-chairs. Ed McManus, who was the co-chair for this building, has volunteered to be one of the co-chairs. So what we'd like to see is that the school committee accept this group to represent them in terms of taking votes to select project managers for you. Ultimately, the votes would come back here, but to have a group that really represents staff, represents the community, represents parents out there, to have this group guiding this project.
Yeah, so this also, it would be subject to open meeting law, so there has to be posted agendas, minutes, all of that. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Jackie. And I simply just want to reiterate what Dr. Carpenter said, because I'm the school committee liaison that you guys elected, and Mary is as well. She just wasn't able to be at that meeting. I'm going to report out actually during subcommittee report outs and let you know all the updates and details. But this is really just, we needed to formally acknowledge what, we as a committee, and took the recommendation of Dr. Carpenter and Michael to form this committee, because it's a sizable project. Like, we don't necessarily have to do it, but it's really advisable to do it and have, such a large project, have some outside expertise, and I'll give you more information, when I do my subcommittee report, but I think I was thrilled to be a part of that group, so I think it's definitely a good move and timely. Let's go.
One of the things I really would just first of all like publicly say is thank every one of them. I was just feeling them out in terms of how much free time do you have. This is what we imagined the scope of the work to be, and the times that we'll be meeting. And let me just take a moment and just read down the list of folks that we have. Lisa Norcross, who's from Harwich. She's a licensed construction supervisor. I believe she works for Eastward Companies. She's also a parent in the district. She's got a child at Harwich Elementary School. Ed McManus, who we've mentioned before, who's former Harwich Select Board member as well. And Ed has been involved in restoration and preservation. We've got Mr. Mark Kelleher back there, who's on the Harwich FinCom. And I didn't even know that Mark had long experiences in construction himself too. So we've got that. Richie Roy, who's a builder for Rick Roy Construction, also parent in our district. We've got Craig Debris, who's a construction engineer, financer, and a parent in our district. As I said, we have Emily Milan, who is a teacher but also a parent in our district. We've got Bob Stello from Chatham. Bob was a longtime teacher at Chatham Middle High School. He's a builder. We have Tom Reed, who is a retired head of school. We've got Peter Troy, who was had experience in special education, and was the chair, as I said, of the Chatham Public Schools Building Committee. We've got John Marsh, who's a builder with Eastward Companies in the district. We've got Eric Whiteley, who we found out was one of Bob Stello's students back in the day. Wow. Who also has, perhaps I would say one of the larger HVAC firms here on Cape Cod. Eric's also part of the Chatham FinCom, and we have both Jackie and Meredith here, who are both parents in the district, and Matt Barnes, who has had a child come through the school and has been with us forever. I think one of the things for me that was interesting in our first meeting is I was part of our building committee to build this building, and I think we had maybe one or two people who were really in the trades. This is sort of the dream team of professionals in terms of, they've been building buildings, the bulk of them, and there was a different level of conversation happening there, and it was clearly above my pay grade.
We also have Rick Travers there, and Abigail Dudley, and did you say our house architect?
So we'll have representation from RDA, the architects, but it was Molly Paris was there for our meeting, and one of the upcoming agenda items Michael will talk to you about an owner's project manager process and that individual would be joining in an advisory fashion.
We just need a motion.
So, do we have a motion? Meredith?
I would like to make a motion to approve the creation of a school building committee for the Monomoy Regional Middle School as a subcommittee of the Monomoy Regional School District.
Second?
Second.
Any questions on the motion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstained? Okay. Thank you, Michael, for that.
Third of four, so we're almost there. So this is, as the superintendent alluded to, as part of this project, under Massachusetts general law, if a project is more than $1.5 million, the public bodies are required to hire an owner's project manager. And so that is, essentially a consultant who can represent and advise the owner in the project with regards to construction issues, budget, timeline, negotiations, and so on. And so we have started the process for that. I issued, similar to, so there isn't a required process for hiring an OPM, but the state recommends you use the same process as you hire your designer. So we should issue a request for qualifications. So that went out just before Christmas. We had a conference. It wasn't a prerequisite. It wasn't a required conference, but we had a couple of OPM firms come in earlier this week. Met with myself and facilities director. We toured the building and gave them some information and background of the project. And the deadline is January 17th, I think, to get those bids into us. We will then, the superintendent and I will shortlist based on the requirements within the request for qualifications. They will then be invited to appear before the building committee, and the building committee will make the school building committee just formally adopted. They will make a recommendation to you of the OPM to appoint, and it will be for the school committee at the next meeting to make that. Any questions or comments?
Okay.
All right. So the last agenda item that I'm going to speak to, so before I go on, I would just like to thank all the parents and caregivers who have stayed this long to listen to this part of the presentation. I know people have some concerns, might be frustrated or have different views on the decisions we've made, but I think, their involvement and their engagement only improves our eventual outcomes, and I'm grateful for all their involvement. I think it's a sign of a healthy district that we can have this conversation, we can challenge us, and we can listen to the concerns. So right now what I'm going to do this evening is just provide a kind of update on a couple of different topics that have been discussion recently. I want to give a bit of a history of air quality tests and other tests that we've done in middle school recently. Talk a little bit about the work that we've done to reduce the risk of mold. So moisture control is mold control, so that's been a big focus of what we try to do. And then just finish with a kind of outline of what we're doing going forward. So there has been evidence of water infiltration in a number of places at the middle school. So we know there's problems with the siding, and that's something we've discussed about. The roof, and there have been issues with HVAC that have caused some leaks. In regard to the siding, we know that that's allowed water to get through the first barrier, but not necessarily all the way into the building, but definitely through the first barrier that protects the building. And staff, as we know, have raised concerns. There were some staff here, and they have raised concerns about odors in the building, about allergic reactions that some staff have had, and in some cases, and we'll talk about it a bit more, in 2 occasions, actual visible mold. So state and federal agencies actually do not recommend testing, but instead they recommend primarily visual investigation of areas and then remediation. So when it comes back to that idea about whether or not you find mold, if you have moisture, you need to fix it. So you should always be trying to find any evidence of water getting into the building or leaks or so on and deal with those. So nevertheless, we understand that just a visual inspection doesn't always provide sufficient reassurance. You can't always see every part of the building structure without destructively taking down walls and looking behind them. So as a shortcut to that, we do run air tests and surface tests on occasion to try and see if there's indicators that there might be a mold problem. So, and we have recently, just in the last week, posted all the test results we've done thus far online. Let me just show you here. This is going to just this is on our website. I can show you. Sorry, I've got a link here. This is on our website. If you go to our district and then facilities, and I think it's the middle school project. It's on the left-hand side, and this will take you to this list. And if you go down the list, it gives you a sort of summary of all the tests we've done back since since 2020, when we first started doing tests. And it provides a little summary of what we found and what we did, and then a link to the actual survey results. So there's a lot of information there, and I think anybody can go in now and see all that information, all the various reports. So just down on the right, there's a link over here. So click here, and that will take you to the report. All right. So as I say, air tests, and I'm going to focus on air tests for a moment because that's a big, that's often a request of staff, and that has been a recent request, not recently, but we've recently heard about requests from families and parents about having air quality tests. So we have done air quality tests. They are an imperfect measure of mold in the building. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is there is no objective standard for comparison. So we get a reading. To be fully frank, we get a reading and it's is that a good reading or a bad reading? And sometimes you run it in the summer and they're much higher than in the winter. So does that mean there isn't mold in the winter, or there's less mold, or there isn't a problem? And because there isn't an objective standard, it's difficult to make that assessment. We have professionals who do this work and they give us their advice, but it is always couched in their caveats. And the other thing is, air quality, and this is another caveat we get, it can be impacted by somebody opening a window in the next room, or somebody walking into the room as the air quality test is going. So sometimes a high or low result isn't necessarily a great indicator of, the entire environment in that room. However, so one thing that we've done is that we kind of keep an eye on, and superintendent put all this detail together, is we look at control samples. So when we have samples taken within the building, we take samples outside at the same time to see, okay, so if this is the number we're seeing in the building, is it much different from what's outside? Because if it's a lot higher, that might be an indicator that something is going on in the building that is not happening outside. Because otherwise, all things being equal, you would expect there to be some similarity between the air outside and the air inside. So what we've done here to kind of analyse where we're at is look at all the outdoor samples we've run since 1920, the control samples, and compare the number of the mold spore count there to the average mold spore count on the internal tests. So when we do that, and this is getting into the detail, and I'll go back and talk generally about what we're doing, but when we've done that, what we've found is that the control sample, there is variation, test to test and so on, but the control sample is often larger and is on average higher than the indoor samples. So, as I say, the methane air quality test sample, everything works against us and for, against this drawing a conclusion in either direction. But it does suggest that what issues they are in the inside is at least partly related to the air outside. And there was one particular occasion during the summer where we did have, visible black mold on 2 ceiling tiles, and those were related to a leak in our HVAC. It was during the summer when it was very humid and hot air was coming in and landing on a cold pipe related to mini splits we had in the office, in 2 of the offices, and that was causing water to drip down on top of a ceiling tile, and left for like a week or so. That then developed mold. So we did have that removed, and the highest indoor air quality results we saw of mold was right up here. These ones around the SRO office and below. When we did tests then, because we had seen that mold, we wanted to make sure it was still safe, and we did after remediation, we redid a bunch of tests to make sure that the numbers had come down. So, and if we even including these high results, which we believe were related to the high moisture during the summer, HVAC problems, we still, even including them, we're still lower than the outside samples, but if you do take them out, then we're significantly lower. So that's our analysis, and if we look at additional, this is trying to look at the data in another way. As I say, it's not perfect, so we look at it just taking an average of each visit, so taking the outdoor control average each visit, and the indoor average for each of these visits, and then comparing them. And again, we see they are pretty close. The air sample's a little higher, but it's mixed picture. So sometimes outside's higher, sometimes inside. Well, of the two times outdoor was higher and 2 times indoor was higher. So what that means is we don't have, this data does not suggest to us that it is unsafe for students to be in school. Does it mean there's no problems? Absolutely not. And we will continue to work on this. But this is why, we are still comfortable, personally, for me and the superintendent, staff, and students to continue to work in the middle school. And I just wanted to address one particular issue. And and then I'll go on to everything we continue to do to keep managing their stress and keep those levels as low as possible. So there was one test, and this kind of comes back to that issue about how difficult it is often to draw conclusive conclusions from the air testing. So we did have one reading, which was where there was an assessment that was severe, and this is to do with some air quality testing that looked at organic compounds in the air, and there's 2 tests here, or 2 measures. One is the total volatile organic compounds, and the other one is the total mold volatile organic compounds. And you can see, and this was an initial testing we had done during the height of the humidity in the summer, and this is the one that was red for severe. But what that is relating to is organic compounds, and this is explained down here, and the red one is coatings, so paint and varnishes, etc. So we were actually, at the same time as this was happening, we were replacing flooring on the same corridor. And so we believe that's what spiked this, and that was a suggestion of the person who came out and did the sample taking, that might be spiked by that work. And actually the mold organic compounds at the time were moderate. So that was really, so it wasn't actually, in this case, and again, that's why I'm always anxious about how we use air testing. In this case, it wasn't spiked by mold, it was spiked by something else. And when we came back in September, after we'd done a lot of remediation of, other moisture in the building, we did some testing again in the same area, and we found that the organic compound now that had been severe before was down at moderate, and the mold organic compounds was actually down at the normal level for that time of the year in that area. But I don't want anyone to take away from this that we're not worried about mold. So we are absolutely concerned about the environment that our students and our staff are working in. And we take it very seriously, and we have carried out extensive investigation and remediation projects throughout the building. And it's difficult to see here, but this kind of highlights what the EPA does say you should be doing. And it is looking at things like, where is there moisture in the building? Where have items been damp for more than 48 hours? Odors, allergic reactions. So some of the things that we are seeing, and the ways that we are remediating. So we have a large number of projects to help tackle this. So that's why I come back to moisture control is mold control. So if we don't want mold in the building, our aim is to go out there and find any place where water is where it should be and make sure it is dealt with. So to do that, so the one there, we do find the mold, we do remediate it, and if it's dangerous mold or toxic, then we take it very seriously. The one time that happened, we had an independent contractor come in, seal off the whole area where that had happened, and remove it under safety conditions. And then we tested, we had an independent person come and test before and after. So that was a remediation. We also have increased and targeted cleaning. So where we have, particularly where we have concerns around odors, or concerns about mold levels, or even where those samples show that some of those molds are higher than we might like, we have people coming in, or a custodial team who are fantastic, have been doing cleaning in areas using mildicide cleaners, which doesn't stop, just to be clear, that doesn't stop the growth of mold, but if there are spores that have come in from somewhere else, it will help deal with them. We have put in air purifiers, and we have air purifiers throughout the building, and more advanced ones in other areas where higher concerns. We have been doing dehumidifiers as well, so that's again reducing humidity helps to manage mold, so we keep humidity down. We've done extensive repair and maintenance of the HVAC systems. So one of that's the key way is to keep circulating the air, because that helps keep moisture down, and it's particularly in the winter and when the air's dry outside. So we have been doing a lot of work to maintain our HVAC systems. We've done roof repairs, such that our roof actually largely isn't leaking at the moment. So we have a lot of work done to make sure the roof is, and that's just, the roof is good for the time being. We have been, although we haven't sited the building yet, we're out there trying to do repairs, patching, filling where we can to avoid water getting in there. We've done flooring repairs where we've found problems with the floors. We're in the process over several years of replacing carpet with tiles, because carpet holds moisture, holds bacteria, so we're replacing tiles, which are easier to clean, and that helps to improve air quality. We've replaced, so as part of the siding project, we know that water is getting into the building around the windows. That has caused some damage to the windowsills, so we've been replacing windowsills with non-organic materials, so even if you do get wet, mold won't grow on them. We have, in one or two places, we've removed drywall, one time as a precautionary measure, and one time because we knew there was a problem. We've replaced damaged ceiling tiles, of course, consultation with a health expert, which is one of the recommendations from the EPA. We replaced damaged furniture. We have done quite a lot of work around the building to improve drainage. So we did notice, and a couple of teachers had highlighted that water was pooling outside the building, and the superintendent mentioned the way it's constructed, some of the paths around the building are higher than the building itself, so the water was pooling there. So we had a contractor come out and improve the drainage, so the downspouts now, instead of draining out in that pool now drain much further from the building, and that helps to reduce the water against the building. And we moved, I hate cutting down trees, but I understand that it's important to maintain the integrity of the building, so we've cut down trees to allow sunlight to get to the building and avoid any damage from the trees. And vegetation, so bushes that were around in the courtyard and were stopping airflow into the building, we've also removed those. And now also, as we know, we have this huge siding project and a project coming as well to replace the roof. So because that is, we do have a lot of repairs there, but it's an ongoing job, so we'd like to replace that. And so, this isn't just a list, so this is our expenditure here on maintenance of the building, so this is not all. This is all about improving the building, and a lot of what we do to improve the middle school building improves air quality, because it's all about HVAC, it's all about it's almost all about HVAC and repairs to the exterior, the envelope. And so you can see, so our expenditure has increased significantly in the last few years. It's gone from under $200,000 in 2020 to over $500,000 in 2024, and we're already over $200,000 by the end of November this year. And so this isn't a defense. I want you to think this is like reassurance. We're taking this seriously, and we're doing a lot of work to help mitigate any areas where we find moisture in the building. But we're not complacent, and we still continue to take this seriously. All of this stuff will continue to happen. In addition, we have 4 strands to our ongoing projects related to air quality in middle school. The first is mold monitoring and remediation. So we are investigating air quality tests throughout the building, as has been requested. So we're talking to, as has been requested, and to continue on what we've already been doing. So to get air tests throughout the building, we're talking to a couple of vendors now to get quotes to see how much that's going to cost. And so we can get that. We have, there are procurement steps we have to go through to make sure we're meeting procurement law when we select a vendor, but we do want to make sure we get tests in there, and that will help us identify if there's problems, where there might be problems, and what more we can do to find them. We will continue to remediate. We're continuing to replace carpet. We'll continue to do, try and tackle the siding problems. And we do have repair, flooring, and HVAC repairs ongoing as well. So moisture control is mold control. So stopping water getting in through the siding is that's been a priority for the district for the last couple of years. That's why we started this project in the first place. We're going to push ahead with that for now. We don't have town approval yet to go ahead with the debt, but we're going to keep moving so we can get in a position to get that hopefully subject to the next item. But that involves selecting the owner's project manager, finalising design, starting the procurement process, and we are looking at whether or not we should be expanding that to include the replacement of the windows, because we know that they are a key weakness in terms of the building envelope. So should we be including the replacement of the windows while we're doing the siding? And that is a topic of conversation that came up at our most recent building committee, and something we'll explore further with them and the designer and the OPM when we have them on board. And so this is another thing that's been raised by parents and the concerned community members is how do you know what's in the drywall, right? So how do you know there's not mold in there that you don't see? And so we are working with the designer on the siding project to have cuts made in multiple locations throughout the building to check the condition of the drywall, to make sure that water's not getting through. We know it's getting through the siding, but we don't know how far through it's getting there. We have done some cuts, so we have some reassurance, but we want to be sure. So getting some cuts of the inside drywall so we can see what condition that's in. And it's a huge building, so it's hard, you can never be 100% sure, but all this evidence and data we're collecting helps us improve our understanding of everything that's going on in the building. And we've combined that with the data that we've got in the feasibility study. And I should say, the places we test and the places we do cuts and the places that they cut from the outside are the worst places we know of. It's the places with the most odors, the places we know are the most damp, or we know that don't get much light. So we are targeting the worst areas because we want to find if there's a problem. We want to find that problem. We want to know how bad it is. So that's the architects surveyed the building and advised us, talking to staff, talking to the custodial team, but where to make the cuts. And likewise, when we do the drywall, we'll target those areas again. We are also looking at alternatives to building repair, so somewhat encouraged by our Town of Harwich Select Board members. We're looking at, so we know that replacing the siding is just the first step of the project to maintain and upgrade the middle school. So, and this is something we also discussed with the school building committee yesterday, on Tuesday. So what are all the projects we think are coming in the next 10 years in the middle school, right? So we know we have to do the siding, we know we have to do the roof, where, the boilers, the HVAC, the air system, HVAC system, the doors probably, all of those systems are going to have to be replaced in the next 10 years. That is going to be an expensive project over 10 years. Is that going to be more expensive than building a new school? So that's the answer. That's the discussion we started having with the school building committee. A lot of factors go into that. Advice, really, initial responses from the building committee. Well, I don't want to pre-speak building committee members. However, I will say when we've spoken to architects and designers, and that their experience of building new buildings right now for schools in Massachusetts is extraordinarily expensive. And so that cost of building a new school is very high. So we need to just be sure that that is still higher than doing all the repairs that we believe are needed for the middle school. So we want to answer that question before we go too much further down this road. I know I'm covering a lot. I would just say if we did end up going down that road, it's like 5-7 years down the road before we'd be moving in. So there would still need to be maintenance and repairs done to the middle school in the meantime. So it's not like a get out of jail free card. I have worked in a school district where we replaced the roof of a building we knew we were going to be tearing down soon, because you still need somewhere for people to be, students to be in school for the next 7 years before you're in the school in place. So that's just something to keep in mind. That I think the idea of a new building sounds great, but I don't think it's a magic bullet to solve our problems today. And finally, and the fourth strand really is the roof replacement project. So we're starting to work with, we're kind of through the first step, or we're in the middle of the first step with the MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority, for our feasibility study of a roof replacement. So the first step is we've submitted the paperwork to the MSBA, and then they assign us an architect and a designer. An architect, designer, and OPM. So although for the siding project we've gone through the process of selecting them ourselves, but with the MSBA project we just give them to you, which is kind of nice because we don't have to go through the procurement process. So we are going through that right now, and that hopefully should start in the next month or so. We'll meet our architect and an OPM, and we'll begin this feasibility study. Finally, just a final, I've mentioned that a few times, this doesn't come as a surprise, but the school building committee is overseeing all this work. So they are helping us to make these decisions on all four of those strands. They will receive the results of all the mold testing and air testing we do. And any significant projects to remediate mold, if it's found, will be overseen by that building committee. They're also and just what the superintendent said earlier about the makeup of that committee and how well placed they are to support the district. And the next meeting is on January 21st, and they will be looking at a number of things. They'll be hopefully appointing an OPM. They'll be looking at siding materials and we'll be talking about if any of the mold testing has been done, or the results are back by then. We'll be sharing that information with them, and they'll be able to provide a lot of help with this process. That's the update. Thank you very much.
Tina?
So I have a couple of questions, and I'm just going to set the school building, physical building aside for a second, because most of the letters and calls and things we're all getting is around health. So I have a couple of questions for you. Under previous and ongoing projects, consultation with health expert singular. Who is that health expert?
So Marina Brock, who previously worked for the Barnstable Department of Health, has worked with us on a number of projects. She would come down and look at air quality. She would do often visual inspections. She did also take surface samples to have them reviewed and give us advice. And her reports are in on the website. So there's a couple of places you can see conducted by Marina Brock, and it gives her advice. And she made that, some of the other things we've done are as a result of her advice, the cleaning, air dehumidifiers and so on.
Okay. So she's given you advice. Did she, I guess, ever at any point say, like, issue an alarm bell? I mean, okay.
I'm hesitant to say no because I don't want you to think we're complacent, but no, at no point did she see anything that suggests that students weren't safe to continue in that building. And I think, Marina's an excellent professional, and she would not have allowed students to continue in an area that was unsafe.
Okay, that's good to know. And I guess the other question I have is really about process. So if somebody in the building, whether they see mold or they want to report it, or maybe they think they have a health issue, what is that process? Like, what happens?
So because of the number of concerns that we have had in the middle school, we do have a bit of a process. So the middle school office keeps a register of concerns that people have had, and they get reported there, and the first port of call is the head custodian who deals with it, goes and checks it out and reports it to the head of facilities, who will report it to me if there's a significant issue or concern that we're not able to meet. And and also sometimes people just email or even bump them into somebody in the corridor and let them know. But we've kept this record in the middle school front office to keep track of all those items.
Okay. And just...
Scott has a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody has...
I was just, you might want to go talk about your regular meetings that you have.
Yeah. So we have had we've got meetings every 2 weeks with staff representatives from the middle school to meet with them to go over their concerns. And, we've, a number of things we've done have come from those meetings. So, let's say the air purifiers. So like one of the meetings we had recently, so we did a lot of work over the recent Christmas vacation. So we did there had been some water damage in the library. We did some further testing of that. We did some cleaning of some of the heating fixtures, and we did some testing. And then so at the last meeting we discussed all that work, and the teachers raised concerns about how often filters were being replaced. So we came up with a system to make sure that the filters, we tag them so you can see when it was last replaced, so they can have confidence that was happening. So that's the sort of thing we're discussing.
Okay. And I know it's kind of hard, I would imagine, like if somebody says, I'm sick or my child is sick, I guess, is there any hardcore evidence that says this happened when you were at school versus home? Maybe there's not.
So this is the crux of the issue. Like, it's really hard. So when somebody says they're not well, and I think that's where some of their frustration comes from, is that they say they're not well, and we go look in their room. So our solution is to go look in the room for moisture. And if we don't find it, then we can do air quality tests, and we don't always find cause. But so what we have done is extensive cleaning of the buildings. We do look at the outside and do fill any gaps that we can find. And sometimes we kind of assume there's moisture and then try and tackle it as if there was, even if we're not able to find it, we assume it's there, so we'll pull all the furniture out. So we've taken, like the last room we did extensively, we pulled some of the cabinets off the wall, because they're built in to make sure there was no problems behind that and there was no water getting in. We pulled the windowsills off, and often as a precautionary measure, just replace them with new windowsills of non-organic method, and throw away the old windowsills. We put air purifiers in, we put dehumidifiers in, kind of all those things, and that's partly why the APA says don't bother with air testing, just assume that it's there and act as if it is, and do all the things you should do as if there's a problem. So air purifiers, checking humidity, checking temperature, making sure water's not getting in places you can't see, all that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, understanding you're going through a procurement procedure that you're required to do, but when would you expect that decision to take place, and then when would you be able to start testing? The other question, part of it is you say throughout the building. What does that mean? Is that every single room? Is that certain sections?
So that's sort of thing where I mean, so to some extent, we rely on experts. So we're talking to a couple of companies to find out what their advice is. But, you know, we want to get comprehensive testing of some kind done to give people reassurance or to help us find problems where they are. So, you know, we're talking to a couple of experts to see their recommendation. But our plan is to have it through, you know, our starting place is like, okay, you know, as a lay person, which I am, I'm like, okay, could we do a test in every classroom? Like, what would that look like? You know, and you know, how feasible is that? You know, and so bearing in mind that the more extensive the testing, the longer it's going to take, you know, because it's hard. I mean, it's time consuming for somebody to come out and take 80 samples of the building using tests. So if that's what requires, that will take longer to get scheduled because they have to have multiple route here. And you know, it's like on the Cape trying to get people, they're all busy. So whereas if it's like, you know, if they can do it in the morning, they'll be able to come and do it like much sooner. So that's the sort of thing we're trying to work out, like how quickly can they come out, how extensive can the testing be, how quickly can we then get the results back? Because all the vendors we've dealt with so far is like they don't actually do, you know, the person comes, takes the test, and then they send it to a laboratory, whether not owned by the same vendor, but often not, to actually do the analysis, and then the information goes back, they analyze it, and they provide a report to you. So just like managing expectations, like all that process takes time. We did have some results. We have results up on the website now of tests. We did 3 tests, 9 tests, but 3 locations, plus outside we did it over Christmas. But I would say, so I would really hope to have had this scheduled within the next few days, by some early next week, so that we know when they're coming out, and really have testing done within a couple of weeks after that, and then results as soon as possible.
Okay, so it's a plan is imminently.
Yeah.
One of the concerns of the parents was communicating as we go along here. What's going to be the best way to communicate? Is it through the building committee, or is there another best way to be able to communicate what it is that, or through the school, because of what it is that you're finding and what the resolution is? Because obviously you all want to know is, and not to be kept in the dark, you want to know, you know, what did you find, what are you doing about it, and you know, what are the results?
So yeah, I think that's a great question, and you know, I definitely think we need to improve our communication and make sure people are aware of what's going on. I think, you know, we do see the building committee as a key vehicle for reviewing and sharing information, but I don't think that's going to be meeting regularly enough to necessarily provide, you know, enough information for families. So, you know, we can also send out emails from the superintendent, from myself, once we have an update. I mean, I think we're looking at milestones. So I think the first and most important thing is like when we have testing planned, sharing that with everybody. When we have those results back, sharing that information, you know, at the right and appropriate time. So, you know, we just, you know, 2 venues really. You know, emails from the superintendent and so on, and through the building committee. And on our website, as we have now.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. So we'll be moving on to subcommittee representative and liaison reports and the middle school building renovation subcommittee report out.
I have just a couple more things to add, just that we met on January 7th. We've gone over the members that are there, and I think it's great that we've also got some teacher representatives as well. And in speaking with town selectmen, they had also suggested that perhaps we have a representative from each town's health department also be on that committee. So I think that's something that we could talk to each town about. And then the only other thing I would say that, including the packet you had tonight, like we were all given this packet. So every member was given, which I think is what you have, and it's 2 pages per page, but I'm not sure. So when we met as a building committee, not only did we, we're there because we're talking about the siding, but we would be remiss if we didn't start talking about what the issue at hand is. And obviously, with the group that we had, you didn't have to tell anyone there that it wasn't because of the siding and/or trim that we're probably having this issue at this time. So we had a really healthy conversation about what's going on, what the concerns of the parents are, what we've done so far, and I really think that the committee did support what we have been doing so far as the best that you can do when you find out all of a sudden that things are becoming more prominently an issue, and in a timely way. We now have this as our capital plan and we're moving forward with it, so maybe we need to move forward a little more expeditiously. We also had the opportunity to ask them, what would you recommend as a group of professionals in this field, not specifically mold, but we had contractors and all kinds of people, and they said, yeah, absolutely. There's no air quality test you're going to do that's going to show zero mold. There's just not. And that it was absolutely the consensus at the table. There was 15 of us there. You're not going to get that. And I know that's hard because that doesn't satisfy. And I know as a parent, it can be difficult because you want to do whatever you can to help your child. And you want to make sure they're safe where they are. So they definitely were like, well, go for it. Let's do another air quality test. And also we talked about the coring that we've been doing, which is literally taking the slices outside of the school. And again, their professional opinion was, you can do it 15 feet this way, you can do it 20 feet this way, but the mold might be right in the middle. And we're going to look like a piece of Swiss cheese if we keep going. Ultimately, what has to happen is we're not going to know what's there until we start the project. But we do want to remediate and understand what we're dealing with and do a couple more invasive tests. And that was their recommendation. And also doing a cost data of additional coring, et cetera, and what that looks like for the cost to the district, because some large-scale remediation projects can be very sizable, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And how that's going to be incorporated. So now we're kind of in a position where we are going to incorporate what's going on and what the apparent issues are with the siding project and what that's going to look like. And maybe we need to adjust our figures. We've also talked about actually needing to most likely replace all the windows now, because that's what we were talking about the other night. So the project's going to morph and change as we find out more information. But I'm thankful that we have this. We had already planned on having the building committee, and what else did we talk about? I think we're all in agreement that it's probably because of the siding and the trim. We've had a lot of conversations about when the building was originally constructed. We had a lot of people there who were either working in the building, worked on the building, worked after the building, were on the building committee, and know the ins and outs of everything that happened. So there's no skeletons in the closet here. And I would just say that we spoke to them about the updates, and that we've been getting the updates since summer, case by case, but I thought this packet was really helpful. And we did talk about developing a communication plan for the building committee itself and what that would look like. And I think it's going to tie in probably closely to what we continue to do with the district. We have our minutes here, we have our meetings here, if we're going to be sending out more notification to parents when and if we are testing and what those results look like. I think the more information sometimes we give people, the better they feel. It can stir angst and uneasiness, but I do think that it's the best course of action, just to make sure that everyone knows what's going on, and making sure that our students and our staff are taken care of. We also talked at length about HVAC, AC. We did a around the building tour. Rick gave us a great tour around the building on the coldest night of the year. And we also did inside. We looked at the projects that they have remediated, like the one where they pulled the wall out and they pulled the casing out, and what was found and what wasn't found, and how they've taken carpets up in this room and that room. And we went to the library and we looked at all the other areas. So it was really a thorough explanation of what they've been dealing with on a case-by-case, which I think most of them kind of looked and was like, yeah, that's all you can do. We're on Cape Cod. This is what's happening. You're going to go case-by-case. You're going to remediate as you can. What we've been doing is reasonable. And I think that, there's a lot of individual things that have been put into place. Like there's a lot of this one has a split, this one doesn't have a split, this one's got this system, this one has that system, this one can manually be adjusted, this one Rick can control all of it. There's the purifiers everywhere, we brought purifiers in during COVID. One of my conversations when we were in the main office was, I was like, geez, there's so many moving pieces and so many systems, it's almost like we need to have one big overhaul of the system, like maybe we need AC. I mean, that's a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, but it's a conversation. And, it's a topic of what's going on with, if we can seal the building more effectively, maybe that's what we do have in place is going to work. So I think that is about it. I know that there were some questions about having a specific task force, but I feel like because we have the building committee, that's sort of redundant, and I think we're going to be able to target exactly what they want, and I think if we are putting together developing a communication plan, sorry, I'm getting tired, developing a communication plan as well, I think that should help, and just keep the lines of communication open. The only other suggestion we had to maybe help parents understand the air quality tests were to test other public buildings in comparison to the school. Test the Harwich Town Hall, test the Chatham Town Hall, and just kind of give them the concept of, we're on the Cape, mold is everywhere. It is alarming, but it's something that we can manage, and it's something that we're proactively working on. So I don't know if that's something we want to do, but it's certainly an avenue we could take. But I'm really enthusiastic about the group. They all have so much knowledge and had a lot of contributing comments, and Scott and I and Michael thank them multiple times for being there, because we know it's a volunteer and it's going to be a big project. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Quick question. I like the idea of having a health representative, only because that, to me, seems to be the bulk of what we're hearing. So how do we speed that up? It sounded like you were in agreement. Do we need to say, yes, let's do that? Like, where does that go?
I think that's just, Scott can reach out to them.
I can reach out and invite, I think they can go and do the same thing that Michael and I, we're not voting members, we're advisory, we're there and invite them to be part of this process.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea. I think it might put some people at rest, knowing we've got health experts.
Representing each town in there.
Yeah. So I would say yes. Would everybody else?
Any other questions? Okay. We will move on to the negotiation subcommittee, which Jess was chairing, and she's not here, but I can certainly pipe in real quick. We've had one meeting. We are still in negotiations. It is ongoing, and that's my update.
Yay.
Legislative liaison report.
Yep, just a couple of things. So many of you probably know we've got our new set of legislators in. They've been sworn in. I think it was New Year's Day they were sworn in. And I found it interesting, Senate President Karen Spilka, who was just voted back in as Senate President, in her acceptance speech of that role, made a commitment to revisit the funding formula, Chapter 70. And because there's been a lot of complaints, especially from small districts like ours, so she has made that part of her agenda in this next term. So I wanted to share that with you. I was very happy to hear that they're committed to revisiting and looking at that. The second item, I will be attending this weekend the Massachusetts Association of School Committees leadership meeting. I'm now the chair of Division 7, which is Cape Cod and the Islands, and including Wareham and Carver. Anyway, we're gathering this weekend to talk about our legislative priorities for the next year. We've talked about the Rural Schools Bill, some of the things we want to get behind and really push. And Karen Spilka, I'm going to be right on her to make sure she does what she says she's going to do. So we're meeting this weekend to put that plan together. Awesome. So that's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent's report.
A few recognitions and one other thing. Prior to the holiday break, Harwich Elementary School held its annual Holiday Bazaar. Kudos to more than 60 student volunteers from our middle and high school who spent Saturday morning helping make the event a success. I'd like to recognize the passing last month of Phyllis Wilkinson, a former teacher at Harwich Elementary School who taught there for 30 years. The family requested that in lieu of flowers, donations be made to the elementary school. I'd also like to note that January is School Board Recognition Month. It's a good time to thank the members of our school committee for giving their time and thoughtfulness for our students and schools. And then lastly, I'd like to just make a very big thanks to the to MAEC. It stands for the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium that has taken us on as a partner. We've signed an agreement with them and will be starting on an equity audit with them in the upcoming weeks. So it's well over $65,000 worth of grant funding that they're helping with, and they have been working, or they have worked and done equity audits for Falmouth Public Schools, for Martha's Vineyard in the area. They're working with us this year, and they're working with Plymouth Public Schools this year on an equity audit. So we'll be meeting virtually with the team from MEC and our administrative team at our next, something's telling me.
You finally get some experience.
At our next administrative meeting, and then start working with our diversity committee to sort of spearhead this process. So you'll be getting a lot more information from me on this in the upcoming weeks. And let's get out of here soon, because Penn State Notre Dame is heading into the third quarter.
10-3.
Go Lions.
12 minutes left. That's it.
They don't give us the controls for it.
Yeah, we did. It's not on the agenda, but, yeah, we did. We basically reviewed Michael's presentation.
The last on our list is the second reading of the policy files.
Madam Chair, would I be able to move that all four of these together and group them in one massive
Does
vote?
anyone have any questions on the policies? You certainly may.
Okay, then I move that files EFD, EHAA, EHB, GBEE be approved as stated in the text.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Okay. The presentation of the warrants has been done. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.